Is it necessary for Gary Neville to make those sort of observations? It feels to me sometimes that him and Carragher are now making observations simply to get attention. It certainly isn't necessary for a leading pundit to come out and say, right, that's it, you should be resigning, you should be going in there. I mean, this is silly stuff. It's not even grown-up conversation worth commenting on.
Martin, every week, it's just slating Manchester United.
No, Mark, just a minute, Mark. Look, I don't take to the field to represent Manchester United, do I?
I think it's graceless. I think Liverpool should want their fans to be better.
We're not Arsenal, serial losers.
How's the biggest club in the world then, losing all these games of football?
I'm sure that they'll have their own view on it and their own sense of entitlement.
It's not my fault. Look beyond me, and try and see that there's a bigger problem Manchester United, Mark.
Right, you. Let's have it clear.
Just when you thought we were winding down and Liverpool are champions and everybody knows what's going on, we have an FA Cup final coming up. Story after story emerges. Martin Keown, Arsenal Invincible, good morning.
Good morning, guys.
I mean, you'd love to be talking about a Champions League final with Arsenal in it, obviously.
That'd have been nice. I was very pleased with the way they played, though. Obviously, they couldn't score the goal in those first 20 minutes. They did Arsenal to PSG what they did to Arsenal in the first match, where they were quite magnificent.
Yeah.
Arsenal took it to them. It was an interesting change yesterday, Martinelli going down the middle. I think that gave you a kind of insight to what maybe comes in the future when Arsenal do have a centre forward that makes runs beyond the opposition's defence, because obviously everything was feet. Suddenly there was a variation.
But how would you feel in a two-horse race if they don't finish second?
Well, I mean, who said it's a two-horse race?
Well, it has been for a considerable period of time.
The last month or so, 6 weeks, Arsenal have not picked up enough points. It's a ridiculous amount of draws. And obviously their workload of fixtures it seems to be okay for certain teams to get to a final and prioritise Europe, but Arsenal played pretty well the same team. Jimmy, if you look, Arsenal didn't make any changes. It's been quite a workload, but they found wanting in the centre forward area. So of course that's going to be dealt with in the summer.
It's going to be dealt with this morning.
Maybe even now.
Yes, indeed. Look at this healthy specimen beside me. You're looking well, my man. Good morning.
Yeah, nice to see you.
Enjoy the weekend sunshine.
I'm sure I wasn't feeling well over the weekend, but I'm all right.
No, I've heard. Yeah.
You've been
all right.
Sorry to hear that.
But he makes it in.
This is it.
He loves
this is the difference.
Loves the Monday show.
Geography. You're going to be sick at home, be sick at work, getting to work. That was my attitude.
Leave your problems at the doorstep when you go to work.
That's absolutely right.
Quite right.
He wants you to get it, that's why, whatever he's got.
Oh, here, listen. I'll accept that.
It's not catching.
A Champions League race then going down to the wire. So where are we at in this incredible scramble towards the end of the Premier League season? Newcastle were the biggest winners, moving up to third in the league with victory over 10-man Chelsea. Chelsea are now down to fifth. Villa moved back into contention on Saturday with a win over Bournemouth, but Forest were pegged back 2-2 by Midlands rivals Leicester, and shock of the weekend came as Manchester City drew a blank at Southampton, of all places. Well done, Southampton. Saints fans, something to cheer about. But Villa moving back into contention on Saturday, and that wasn't lost on Unai Emery when he spoke to Sky Sports.
Good afternoon. Europe. Yes, because Europe, to be in Europe, very important.
Do you know what? Maybe he's referring to the two last games he's got of the season, which is Spurs and Manchester United, because that's all they're thinking about is Europe. Because maybe that's the easiest 6 points you're going to pick up between now and the end of the season.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I love the way he did that, though, Simon. It's just like he's just got a win over Bournemouth, so I'm going to go for it. Europe. And the emphasis is on that. Yeah. Who's going to finish in the Champions League places?
Yeah, I mean, they've qualified for a European competition, haven't they? I mean, they will hope it won't be the European Conference. That won't look such an admirable thing for him to have said. Look, I think Martin's hit the nail on the head. Villa have got the two games against the teams that couldn't care less in their league right now. They've got nothing to play for in the domestic league. Yeah. They're going to be able to want to recycle their playing squad to give the best version of themselves in the Europa League final. So of all the run-ins, you'd probably say Villa have got the best opportunity to give themselves an opportunity. I think if you look at who's going to qualify for the Champions League spot and who would be the most disappointed and who would be the most challenged if they didn't achieve it, I think it has to be Chelsea. I think Chelsea now, 3 years into a project, have got to start hitting their straps. You can't make cases for owners to turn around and say, like they can't make it for managers, you can't keep on talking about what's going to happen in the future. you've got to start happening now.
Sure.
So for
They
Chelsea,
also play Manchester United, Simon, don't they? And who've down
They do,
tools.
they do,
And then
but it's the
Forest,
it's
which
the
is
Forest game.
Yeah, be an epic.
Mind you, it'd be pretty tough, and questions would be asked if Manchester City miss out.
I don't think
And
they will.
Pep.
I don't think they will. I think Manchester City, despite the result against Southampton, have got their momentum back, which is not a great sign for the cup final on Saturday.
But if you don't beat Southampton, how can you say with any certainty that you beat Bournemouth and Fulham?
Exactly. So has it been a week?
Because Bournemouth will attack Manchester City.
Yeah. I mean, Simon, a weekend of
FA Cup
damage
game as well there.
A weekend of damage minus a knockout blow, really, isn't it? When it comes down to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a pretty telling blow for Nottingham Forest. I think Nottingham Forest would have anticipated of getting more than 1 point out of the last 2 games, getting beat by Brentford and drawing against a poor Leicester side.
They fought hard though.
They will fight now because they've got nothing to play for, which is a terrible mentality to have for your fans to watch players play at the end of the season when there's nothing on the games anymore.
Right. Well, you've taken us right to it, Simon, to be honest. Nottingham Forest at the end of that, 2-2 with Leicester. And what do you know? On comes, onto the pitch, that is, the owner, Evangelos Marinakis, a recognisable sight at any time of the day or night. Gary Neville said what happened thereafter was scandalous from that Forest owner. Nuno should go and negotiate his exit tonight with him. The Forest fans, players and manager do not deserve that. Essentially, Marinakis comes on and has an earful for Nuno as he's walking by, and Nuno Espirito Santo's expression changed somewhat. This was Nuno's version of events.
Comes for the situation that unfortunately in the last 10 minutes we had one man less, with situation of the not able to give us a hand to the team, to help the team because they were too much in pain, and that circumstance came from a bad communication between departments, our coaching staff and medical department. That they had the info of one thing, it proceeds, we make the sub. Unfortunately we then have another stoppage time. And after that, I think 30,000 people that were in the stadium were really, really upset, rightly so.
So unusually, Marinakis, the owner, put a statement out. Everybody, coaching staff, players, supporters, including myself, were frustrated around the injury of Taiwo and the medical staff's misjudgment on Taiwo's ability to continue the game. This is natural. This is a demonstration of the passion we feel for our club. Yeah, sure, I get that. But what is worse, Simon, an overly passionate owner or an absent one, like the Glazers, Stan Kroenke? I mean, this fella turns up, but should he have done what he did?
By the standards of what people expect people to do, probably not. Was it necessary? Probably not. Was it a poor piece of professionalism from the medical staff? Yeah. Should he have dealt with them offline? Yeah. Is it necessary for Gary Neville to make those sort of observations? It feels to me sometimes that him and Carragher are now making observations simply to get attention. It's a ridiculous conversation to suggest that Nuno Espirito Santo, that was brought back from Middle Eastern football by a motivated owner, that might well have stepped across the line in the eyes of the orthodoxy of how people should behave in the football world. The same people that have this orthodoxy don't hold the standards themselves, but let's just say that they're right, that it's not really necessary for an owner to walk onto a field and to do what he did, but it certainly isn't necessary for a leading pundit to come out and say, right, that's it, you should be resigning, you should be going in there. I mean, this is silly stuff. It's not even grown-up conversation worth commenting on.
I actually thought the Forest manager dealt with it really well, actually, and he talked about emotion. Obviously, this owner's going to come on. He's very passionate. You're going to take the good with the bad with him. And I thought the manager dealt particularly well with him. One thing that did worry me and concern me, and I don't want to come for the officials, but the incident involved, the guy was 10 yards offside when he was running through, and why they waited until he was nearly very serious injury.
That's the rules.
Well, I just feel it was so very obviously offside, that flag really should have come up.
If we stick on Marinakis, should the pitch ever be the owner's domain, Simon? Did you ever go on it?
Not to remonstrate with my manager, no. I went on it once to ask fans to clear the field in a playoff semi-final because I thought our fans celebrating in front of the Sunderland fans on the first leg of a playoff final was ill-advised, and I didn't fancy having a fine for a pitch invasion. But to go on there and remonstrate with the manager, no, it's not necessary. But there was different ownerships, there's different models. One thing you cannot deny is this man's commitment. This man's commitment to his football club, whether you like him spitting on the floor in front of officials or whether you like the cut of his jib and where he's got his money from and what the calibre of the man is irrelevant. He has bankrolled this football club to such a level that it's catapulted them out of the doldrums of 23 years in in the backwaters of football.
Yeah.
And there's been some significant people. Nigel Dougherty was a friend of mine that owned Nottingham Forest, well-heeled, financially highly motivated and very committed to Nottingham Forest, couldn't drag that team out of the Championship. This man's come and done it. And so he steps across the line. The balance is, what do you want? Do you want uninvested owners or do you want emotional ones? Do you not believe that Spirito Santo would have known what this animal is? He's worked with him for a year. He knows what the man's capable of.
That's what I was able to deal with.
It's other people that are becoming offended on behalf of him, and they should pack it in.
Yeah.
The principal identity of Nottingham Forest, with due respect, has been established by Marinakis. He has bought and paid for his football club to get itself back in and amongst the elite. The reasons why that 18 months ago, 2 years ago, everyone was saying what a shocker he was. He was buying players and Steve Cooper didn't know whether he was Arthur or Martha. They don't say that now.
So you're saying it's all right that he was on there?
No, I'm saying I wouldn't do it. But I don't think.
Is it a cultural thing, Sam?
Who's to judge it?
Greek owners are on the pitch almost every blinking week.
Who is to judge it? Who are the people that define the standards? Who arbitrates what is right and wrong in this day and age? The very people that don't uphold the standards themselves.
Do you think that's nonsense from Neville? Nuno should go and negotiate his exit tonight.
But it's just silly. It's just for people to react to. It's clickbait. Gary's a better observer than that. You don't need to be saying these sort of things. Nuno Espirito Santo is not going to be rocking into his chairman's office and saying to him, I'm out the door.
Yeah.
Because he knows that the guy's committed to the club. Now, whether an owner should do that. By the way, why is there one rule for owners and one rule for everyone? Everyone else is allowed to show emotion. Just out of curiosity.
But do we want it to become the norm to see the owner?
No, you don't.
No.
But we understand it comes with the territory with this man, don't we? And eventually he's going to let himself down. And I think actually the manager dealt beautifully with it. And that's why he's the manager of that football club. And they have taken him a hell of a long way, by the way, in 12 months. Yeah.
I wonder if in something of a weird way, Forest fans, did you quite like that? Did you like that demonstration of passion from Marinakis? You might want to give us a call on that. The fact, Simon, that Marinakis put a statement out, I think means that he dwelt on it and thought, yeah, I better say something here.
Well, he knew what was coming, but also he froze his... they are right. It was a poor set of unprofessional judgments being made about a player that was injured that should have been substituted.
Yeah.
Right? But he's then gone and doubled down on it by throwing his coaching staff and his
the physio
under the bus.
That's unfortunate.
And that personally,
the player may have given an indication that he was okay to carry on.
But he should have the wherewithal to want to say to them privately. I don't believe that you berate people publicly. I believe that you take them to one side and you go, right, let's have it clear. And people get to know the picture. You don't need to do it in the public eye, I don't think.
The thing is, if a manager does it, we let it go. Guardiola regularly does it with some of his players, doesn't he? Gives them an earful when they're coming off. So Marinakis decides, I'm going to go and have a quick word with Nuno. And now, of course, it explodes.
Yeah.
That's Pep's territory, isn't it? You expect him to do that. He's the manager. Okay, I don't like it, really seeing it, so open, public. I prefer that in the dressing room.
Mind you, it's his club. It's Marinakis.
But he's making a statement.
And there's the other side of the argument.
There's the other side of it.
The other side of the argument is Nottingham Forest fans.
He can do what he wants.
If the Nottingham Forest fans are offended and beyond all level of consolation about what their owner's done, then we may be able to listen to it. But if I'm going to listen to other people that most of the time spend their time berating their own owners, going in on this one because it sounds good, makes a good soundbite, how people can react to it.
When it comes to hard hitting, you can't argue that over the weekend, Ruben Amorim of Manchester United didn't miss and hit the wall with his post-match comments following the home defeat to West Ham. Where on earth are Tottenham and Manchester United going in to a Europa League final in Bilbao in a matter of days? Incredible. Both Spurs and Manchester United suffered home defeats at the hands of Palace and West Ham, respectively. Manchester United, as we speak this morning, are 16th, with 17 defeats in this league campaign. Tottenham lie 17th, with 20 defeats in this league campaign. 20 defeats. The most losses they have ever suffered in Premier League history. We're going to get to Tottenham in a second, but where are United? I mean, how can Spurs and Manchester United really be European finalists in one breath and domestically inept in the next? Amorim hinted, that winning feeling, we've lost that.
We had lack of pace. We have to do so much better. And for me, the biggest concern is that feeling that is okay. And we cannot change our position so much, so it's okay. And that is the biggest problem in our club. in this moment because we are losing the feeling of we are a massive club and it's the end of the world to lose a game at home. We need to change something that is deeper than this. And if we are showing that in the end of this season that we are not playing Premier League and Champions League for us is the moon. So we need to know that. And so I'm not concerned about the final. They will be focused. And I don't know what is best, if he's playing Champions League or not. So let's think about Chelsea to improve a lot of things.
So he's really there questioning whether or not playing Champions League football is the best thing for Manchester United at this time. And that was one thing. This was another. The culture of the football club. He actually asked questions of himself in that, is he the right man to change that culture?
I don't know. And I don't want to talk about players. I'm talking about myself and the culture in the club and the culture in the team. I have that feeling. We need to change that. And we need to be really strong in the summer and to be brave because we will not have a next season like this. If we start like this, or if the feeling is still here, we should give the space to different persons.
Give the space to a different person. In other words, it won't be him. Somebody else will be attempting to do what he's been attempting to do now in the past few months. The winner of this thing, Simon, gets Champions League football. That is the prize.
Yep.
But can you get your head round why Tottenham and his United can be European finalists in one breath and so domestically inept in the next?
Because they can attend to a cup competition, but they can't attend to the domestic rigours of the Premier League. You've got a coach that didn't want to manage Man United this time. He wanted to probably manage them at the end of the season. Doesn't want half the playing squad there. Is creating a narrative that I don't think is advantageous, but it has its reasons. There's a method to this man's madness. We might see it next season. But right
What's
now,
that? What is the method?
Well, I think the method is that he's having a game with the media and his owners, because there's no point in the things that he says. There isn't any point. So there must be a reason for him saying it. I try to work things through pragmatically. I look at things objectively and don't just spend time emotively reacting to them for the purpose of a radio show. I sit and think, well, what's the purpose of that? And I can't work out what the purpose for it is, besides he's being a little bit disingenuous in the media and playing a game with the media. And we'll wait to see what comes under the bonnet next summer when he gets into the summer campaign, clears out what he thinks aren't good enough players, and subsequently builds on a platform which will be his own. Postecoglou is tactically inept at times, and so his team get found out. And so you've got two managers that won't compromise on their belief systems. One manager's coming in with a group of players that can't play the way he wants them to play, and he's set them up to some extent not to achieve outcomes, and then it's talking about the culture of the reasons why these outcomes aren't being achieved. And you've got another manager who's got a group of players that should be doing far better, but because of the way he sets them up, which is we'll go and score 5, it's a rich man's version of Ozzy Ardiles. And I like Postecoglou, but it'll work in a competition where you've got a couple of games every other week, every other 2 or 3 weeks to play in a cup competition. Well, I don't know what it tells you about the Europa League. Since we're saying they stink in the Premier League, they're dominating the Europa League.
But you know, since when was it acceptable to pick and choose your games? It's interesting that FA Cup holders at the moment, Manchester United, they kind of showed their colours, didn't they? The signs were there last year. They go a big game against Man City. They turn up to play. They decide when they want to play. And I'm always suspicious of a dressing room when they pick and choose the games they want to play in. And that's what we have right now. And I think they'd
be higher up the league with Ten Hag.
Well, they probably
would be higher up the league with Ten Hag.
I think the current manager really should have kept the system the same. He shouldn't have made the changes. That was really... maybe he's putting his hand in the air now. He's making very striking comments, and you know, the worst Manchester United team we've ever seen. This week it's now I might not be here next year. Now I think this is the most telling one, because you cannot go on, was it 6 wins from 25 league games? We are now 13 years since Ferguson last won the Premier League. We are 10 managers down the line, and I think it's suddenly acceptable if you're at Manchester United. No, I don't think it is, and I think he's realising that. He may be a call to arms. I need money in the summer. You need to make this better, because if you don't, then I might have to walk. And I think we're in the realms, of that area now.
I don't think he's saying he's going to walk. I think what he's saying is, if I continue along this vein, which, by the way, I have in part created. And he's also, I'll get saying, but he's also got an interesting reaction from the United fans. They think that this is a brand of authenticity that's telling it as it is, and sticking it on the toes of this dressing room that they're fed up with players that don't perform for Man United the way they should. They think that it's sticking it to the owners that they're going to need to put more money in. I don't think it's any of it. I think it's Amorim is a bit Machiavellian, and I don't think he's as authentic. He's the guy that photobombed clubs to get a job during the summer because that was his operandi.
You don't think he's messaging to the board then that he wants?
I think there was an element. But
has he been told potentially that there's not enough money there?
I think there was an element of that, yes, but I don't think it's quite as authentic as the fans think it is. They're championing this authenticity. They're going, at least he's telling us the truth. Now, his job, in my view, wasn't to make it worse. You know, the idea that you take 2 steps back to take 1 step forward is not a good thing for me. I think that you've created a narrative that you're steering into. He's rode back from all the things he says.
Yeah.
When he says things like we're the worst club, he then says it's his age. Well, pack it in. You're the man of Manchester United. You don't talk about how young you are and you're inexperienced enough. You're either good enough or you're not.
Right. If they went in the Europa League final, would he be sacked at the end of the season?
No. They wanted him.
No,
they've courted him. They've allowed him to behave this way.
17
defeats. They're allowing him to behave this way. They're allowing him to set his team up in a certain way. Nobody's saying to Amorim...
But isn't that remarkable almost in itself, that this is now the standard? And these guys were setting the standard
for this season. For this season, as
a club.
You say he's been Machiavellian with the media, Simon. Is he saying anything genuine when he talks to the media?
I'm not sure. I'm trying to work out, and that's not that because it's evading me. I'm trying to think what the messaging is.
I think he's honest after the games, and then he has to spend the rest of the week trying to sort of not be almost like pretend he didn't say it.
I think he's questioning if Champions League football is good for the club.
Well, I mean, of course it would catapult them into a different stratosphere, wouldn't it, straight away financially?
Martin. Everybody says, this is Manchester United.
Yeah, but you'd want to be in the Champions League. Would you take advantage of that gift horse?
Nobody picked United to do to Bilbao what they did, though, did they? Nobody picked them to do that. So we don't pick the bones out of that. We only pick the bones out of the bad things.
Is it not as straightforward as this?
We
are crap, and I cannot change this.
He can't motivate the players. So he's looking at the players in their comfort zone.
But he's
going through the motions.
He's helping them
in the Premier League.
Well. He's facilitating the crapness. He's facilitating an outcome. Losing the games the way that United have lost games since he's arrived in the door has been facilitated by, in part, his selection, his way of thinking, and some of the things that he says. He's facilitated those outcomes. So he can't just turn around and say it's crap. But he can, because he says it about himself as well. It's not good enough. I think we judge this man next year. I think that's the end of discussion.
I'm amazed you think he's going to get that far.
Oh, he'll get that far. He'll get that far.
You wouldn't have given Ten Hag this kind of treatment.
Well,
or Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. There's another one. You'd have been flattening them.
Yeah. Do we see both managers losing their jobs in the summer? You know, I mean,
every chance.
You know, I mean,
surely.
But we're drawing different parallels at different times.
Amorim, you're saying now though, even if Tottenham beat them in Bilbao, he goes into next season
because ultimately he inherited a situation. I always thought that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was a forced choice based upon a couple of results. They got a few games in against Cardiff and PSG, and everyone went, away you go. And I think culturally that was the beginning of the tectonic plates slipping to such a point that United didn't have the culture. They didn't have any remnants of the culture from the winning environment.
Neither does this guy.
Ten Hag talked nonsense and defied logic and sat in front of people and insulted their intelligence. And it began to irritate people, and you were in this camp as well.
But isn't this the worst we've ever seen, though? Where you can list all those managers, and
the argument will be, and I'm not for or against him. The argument will be is that he's inherited a group of players that were patently not good enough. He's got all the sins of someone else's activities without any ability to change it. The rumour is, and whether you're taking notice of rumours, he didn't want the job until the back of the end of the year, so he didn't have to have this footprint. So he's exacerbated it. He's made it as bad as it could possibly be. Probably the Europa League is actually an added inconvenience because it doesn't make it look as bad as it could be.
But back in the day when the Scholeses and the Keens lost, it was the end of the world, wasn't it? Now it's commonplace.
It's a norm.
They lose games, 9 now at Old Trafford?
I saw that at the weekend, Martin. I thought, they lost to West Ham. Yeah. That's where they're at. But there is the highly significant matter of a Europa League final coming up, which will feature the two Premier League sides currently sitting in 16th and 17th place. Manchester United against Tottenham. How the hell can that be? How can Manchester United and Tottenham be European finalists in one breath and domestically inept in the next? So United lost at home at the weekend to West Ham, and Tottenham lies 17th with 20 defeats in the league campaign thus far. The 20th of which came at the hands of Crystal Palace at home at the weekend. And Postecoglou gave his version of events post-match.
I just think maybe some of it's just, sort of psychological in terms of, not being able to cope with what's before us at the moment. you know, with everything, with elite sport, you know, if you're a little bit off it, you pay the price. And, you know, we're kind of, like I said, trying to navigate this sort of fine line of being prepared for, you know, a really big game, and but also needing to perform at levels that you need to in the Premier League, because it's, you know, it's unforgiving, and we're just not navigating that well.
So, Martin, according to him, it's about the players navigating this fine line between a big game just around the corner, and that's in Bilbao, and that's a European final against Manchester United, and navigating what's left for them to navigate in the Premier League. How difficult is that if you're a player?
Well, I mean, he makes copious changes to every team, doesn't he? Every selection. I don't know, Manchester United are doing something similar. They've thrown the kids in, and he probably feels he needs to do that. Certainly with the centre backs who've had so many injuries between them. So lots of changes. 20 defeats, he knows, is simply not acceptable. To be, you know, in 17th place in the table for Spurs. They finished 5th last season. To drop, there's no one dropped off like that. In a way, it's like he's able to put two fingers up to everybody, the media, on the way out if he wins the Europa League. For him to be still in the job, I mean, there'll be an awful lot of managers who've already lost their job at this point, haven't they? Been, when you think of like Harry Redknapp, and people have come out of this, you know, their job at Spurs, and will be looking at this thinking, how on earth has he actually stayed? He's defiant. He says he always wins a trophy in his second season, and he's probably going to do it. Looking at Manchester United, the two teams, I know maybe people will say, okay, Man United's name is maybe on the cup, the way that they were behind against Lyon and that late equaliser.
So you're taking Tottenham to beat United?
But I think that they look like, if I was to actually, if they get their best team on the pitch, if there's a bit of balance to the way that they set up, then they certainly have the ingredients to be able to beat Manchester United, because Manchester United can't keep kind of like, I know both teams are guilty of it, Jim, picking and choosing when they play, and that's the thing that makes you suspicious. But maybe they do win a trophy. Maybe both managers end up being de-seated and then come out of their jobs. But it's 37 defeats now between these two clubs. It's almost a full Premier League season. Probably will be by the time we get to the final. It's remarkable fall from grace, and Spurs were just on the crust, weren't they? 5th place, just missed out, and now look at them 17th. It's remarkable decline.
How ironic would it be, Martin, if Tottenham end up winning a trophy in this era before Arsenal, a European one?
Well, I mean, you say, what's the irony in it? I mean, where does it? Are they an elite club? Would you say they're an elite club? They get into the Champions League somehow, at the bottom of that pile. What are there, 30-odd teams, and will they be the 36th team? Is the Europa League really? I mean, you look at the teams in the Europa League, it's nowhere near the Champions League now in quality, now that the teams from the Champions League don't fall out from the group stages and bounce back into it. But, you know, it makes the Europa League attractive. If you can win that and get into the Champions League, it's a massive boost in the arm. And when you've got the Manchester United manager saying it doesn't really matter, we don't want it, of course he wants it, because it gives them the resources financially. We're hearing Manchester United don't have the resources now, don't have the money. This would transform them if they were to get it. So this is a huge game, but I don't think it's acceptable to lose 20 games of football in the Premier League. It's remarkable.
And I'll put you on the spot again. Who are you taking to win in Bilbao?
I think Spurs have a better chance of winning this. Yeah, I'll do that. It's my opinion. I think that if they can get everybody on the pitch, if Van der Ven is on there, Romero it forms that partnership. I think it's really key. If they can get a balance from dropping off instead of that stupid high line, if they can get that balance, and they've got a balance to their play. I think attacking wise, Solanke now is coming into a little bit of form. Maddison's a big miss, but I think they've got enough in that team to win it. What we'll probably see is Man United take it to extra time and win on penalties, but I think Spurs are capable.
Where are Tottenham and United fans with their clubs this morning? Mark is a big Spurs fan. Mark, good morning. I know you've been waiting patiently. Where did you start, mate?
Morning, guys. Good to talk to you all.
Morning. Morning, Mark. Sounds like a Monday morning. Good morning, but on you go.
Yeah. I just wanted to pick up something Martin said. Not just Martin. It's been kind of like the narrative, really, about this. The lack of Champions League dropout places means that the competition's weaker. If you look at the final last year, neither side that competed had dropped out the competition. couple of years ago, you had probably the weakest 4 semi-finalists in a while: Frankfurt, West Ham, Rangers, and Leipzig. And I think only Sevilla have won it, having dropped out in the last few years. Just wanted to sort of pick up on that. And I think the fact we're 17th is totally unacceptable, but I think we've almost needed a season where we weren't challenging for the top 4 or 5 in order to try and get this monkey off our back with regards to cups. People can't have it both ways. They banter us for coming second or third for 4 or 5 years in a row and not winning anything, and now we've got a chance of winning something. It's like, yeah, but your league form's poor. It's like the narrative just switches to suit whoever's having a pop at Tottenham.
What do you want to say, Martin, to Mark?
Well, I'm not having a pop at Tottenham. I'm just looking at their record this season, and it's just simply not good enough, is it? I mean, to be 5th in the table last season and fall all the way to 17th. Look, okay, if it's a blip, it's a one-off, you get your trophy under your belt, and then next season you finish. Where are you going to finish next year? I don't think it's a given that you suddenly can flick a switch as a group of men and suddenly turn things around. So, no, I think you're judged on your league form. That's the bread and butter. That's the consistency. That's how you're judged, how you play each season. And at the moment, it's a shocker for Spurs. There's no doubt about it. Of course, they're in a final. I don't think Bodo Glimt were really at the level that people really expected. Of course, it's professional performance. They've done that. But really, I think if Spurs don't win this trophy now, it's going to be an absolute dreadful season for them.
And fast forward to post this final, Mark. Say you win it, say you lose it. What kind of season have you had?
If we lose it, it's been a horrific season. If we win it, the memories that will be made next Wednesday will probably supersede anything I had in the Pochettino era. As I said, when we were coming second, third and fourth for 5 years on the Poch, we were told that winning a League Cup or winning an FA Cup was more of a measure of your success than winning nothing. You don't get medals for coming runners up. As I said, I've come second, third, fourth routinely. I want to see us win a cup now. The memories that can be sort of made for life.
Okay, good call, Mark. Thank you for that. James is a Manchester United fan. What is your thinking this morning, especially after what you hear Amorim has been saying over the weekend, James? Good morning.
Thank you, guys. Basically, I just wanted to...
James has dropped his phone in the goldfish bowl, I think. We'll maybe get him back. We're going to... Yeah, David has come through. Many United fans coming through, so we'll take your call. David, good morning. Same thing for you, mate. What about Amorim's latest comments?
Hi there, gentlemen. Good morning. Great show as always.
Thanks, David.
Great to be on. Well, Amorim's comments, I mean, what to say? I think there's always a bit of truth behind the comments. I think he's come into a really difficult job. I mean, the point I wanted to make initially, the reason I made the call is I've heard Martin now make a comment in terms of the formation that we're playing, and a number of times now, and it's beginning to kind of get under my collar a little bit. I just wanted to put this question to Martin and ask him, when Arsene Wenger came to Arsenal and he asked you guys to switch to a formation and say he wants to play a 5 from now on, going forward, how long it took you guys to switch to that formation as professional footballers? Because from what I see on the pitch at United is they've had 6 months now where these are professional footballers paid a lot of money to adapt to a certain formation. Now, you're telling me, Martin, that in 6 months, these players cannot, because we are not seeing anything on the pitch where there's no patterns of play, there's hardly any improvement, there isn't anything to show me that these players are understanding how to play as a 5 at the back. So how is that? Please explain.
David, let me explain. So when Arsene Wenger arrives at Arsenal, 97-98, 5 games into a new season, he decides to leave it. We were playing with a back 5. He didn't want to play a back 5, but the intelligent thing to do from his point of view was leave it as was, because he wasn't the one on trial then, it was the players. So we carried on with very little change. The start of the next season, he said, right, okay, I'm going to implement the changes I wanted to make, which is one of the reasons why I've been so critical of this manager, suggesting that his tactical vocabulary is very limited. He should have, because then everyone now is pointing the finger at him. He should have left it as it was. Play a 4-3-3.
Why can't he come in and tell you guys to play 5 straight away? Why do you need 6 months? Why can't you do it straight away?
Well, because obviously the manager is not showing that he's got the capability to stitch in the new information. Now the players, are comparable as well because they can't take that on board. But I don't think the group was suited, David, to change to this system.
When you're saying stitched information, you add in an extra defender and your movement in your position is slightly different. This is what professional footballers do, Martin.
Yeah, but do you think the squads, your wide players, for instance, are they really suited to play with wing backs?
Not particularly, no.
Do you think Fernandes really works hard enough out of possession?
Yes, I think he's one of the hardest working players.
When you play this system of 3-4-2-1, then you've got just two players in the midfield at times, and they found heavily wanting in that area. Surely it'd be easier just to have a third player in there, no?
As professional footballers, mate, I think that the evidence is there for everybody to see. These guys...
No, but David, you're wrong because they're not performing, are they? So when they don't perform, then you need to change back again, don't you? So the manager has tried really hard to make this work, and it hasn't worked, only in Europe.
To go back to what, Martin, to what every single manager beforehand has done, Amorim, and play to the player's hand, and then eventually get him sacked. Because they choose when they can play and when they can't play. If something
gets worse and not better, then you have to say the manager is culpable for that. No,
the players. But I think what David's saying is, why have the players not been able to implement what Amorim wants?
Because I don't think they're suited, Jim, to this system. They're not suited to play in that way at the back, and they're not. And in wide areas, they're not. And Haaland there's not enough bodies around him.
Where do you stand in this, Mark? Another big United fan. Good morning.
Oh, yeah, good morning. My first point is that, Martin, every week it's just slating Manchester United.
No, Mark, just a minute, Mark. Look, I don't take to the field to represent Manchester United, do I? It's not my fault. Look beyond me, and try and see that there's a bigger problem Manchester United, Mark. Seriously.
Give the balanced opinion. You come on every week.
We've just been talking about Spurs with equal measure.
Again, you were negative against Spurs. You were not promoting anything.
At the start of the season, I was saying that Spurs would end up in the top four. They've made me look a fool.
We're all about now, aren't we? Here and now.
So you can't say that I don't try and support other teams. I've said time and time again that it'd be nice to see Manchester United back up there again with the big boys, and it's pretty sad to see how far they've fallen.
Biggest club in the world.
So it's not.
We're not Arsenal, serial losers.
How's the biggest club in the world then? Losing all these games of football every week.
Because Ruben Amorim is trying to implement a new style of football that's not...
But it's not new anymore, is it? He's been there 6 months. It's not new, is it? It's not happening. So you have to change.
No, you don't change, do you? You stick to what he knows and how he coaches. That's why we're unbeaten in Europe.
I would suggest that it's just the fact that we find ourselves in a time in history where we're, 13 years down the line with you 10 managers in, and you now want a stance of loyalty. Let's stick with this man. Maybe it's a blind loyalty, and maybe in the end you're in a much worse position you found yourself before he got there.
But he's had 6 months, like you said.
So you don't think it's long enough?
8 years, what's he won? 1 FA Cup. And that wasn't even his squad. Manchester United...
Do you feel it's acceptable then? What's you're seeing?
Unbeaten in Europe.
Okay, you want to talk about your... but since when do Manchester United just play in Europe? They play in all competitions.
Mark, if the bottom three weren't as bad as they've been, you'd be in a relegation scrap, mate. Europa League final or no Europa League final?
Potentially not, because we would be concentrating on the league and not trying to win Europe as well.
Simon would say, if my aunt was my uncle. Mark, listen, thanks for the call. I'm heading down, the fella comes out in office and he says to me, I'm a Liverpool fan, you're going to be talking about Trent. And I said, yeah, we will be. And I said, yeah, what did you think? And he says, yeah, it's simple enough, Jim. Yeah, you'll never walk alone, but terms and conditions apply, he said. So really? Terms and conditions apply. Let's get into this. Liverpool up against Arsenal yesterday. Now, I'll cast your mind back to just a few days before that. Liverpool are the Premier League champions and Trent Alexander-Arnold has played a major part. Prior to his announcement last week, an announcement that we all knew was coming, his two colleagues, Mo Salah and Virgil van Dijk, had said, we're staying and we carry on with our careers at Liverpool. But Trent was a bit different, and so was his message.
After 20 years at Liverpool Football Club, I'll be leaving at the end of the season. I think the decision for me is personal. To change environment, to challenge myself elsewhere. It's not about wanting to find something better. It's about me and my personal journey as a player, and I feel like now is the right time for me to go and experience that. It's something that I feel like I need to do on my journey in my career. The memories, the special moments are and will always be some of the best moments I'll have in my life, and memories that will live with me forever. And I'm eternally grateful to everyone who's helped me along the way. Being able to sit here now as a two-time Premier League champion for the club that I grew up loving, it's a great end to the story for me. It's all I've ever known. It's everything I've ever wanted to do.
Scunthorpe money.
So that was Trent speaking from the heart. It's all about my personal journey. And I'm eternally grateful to everyone, the fans, everybody at Liverpool who have helped him on his way. And the fans have played a major part in that. And he's grateful to them. And after all, this is Trent Alexander-Arnold, who has won everything he can possibly win at Liverpool. 2 Premier League titles, 1 FA Cup, 1 EFL Cup, FA Community Shield, Champions League trophy, UEFA Super Cup, FIFA Club World Cup. He's won the lot. And now, in his personal journey, the next stage is somewhere else. And that somewhere else is more than likely to be Real Madrid. So yesterday, Trent Alexander-Arnold came on to the field of play as a substitute, the game against Arsenal, and a large section of the Anfield crowd booed him and booed every touch he had with the ball thereafter. Arne Slot spoke about that post-match.
I said to everyone that asked me that question, that it's a privilege to live in Europe where everybody can have his own opinion and everybody can express his own opinion. I owe it to the players and to the club and to the staff, for everyone that works so hard for us to win a game of football, to try to do that. And if we are after 70 minutes 2-2, Connor can't continue and I have a world-class fullback on the bench, I bring him in, and I think it's a big compliment for him, because you can understand how mixed the emotions were in his head probably as well. That you bring in a performance like that tells you why everybody thinks he's a world-class fullback, because with him we were quite close to winning this game. Yeah, but I think if you clap, it's not as loud as if you boo. But I didn't count the amount of people that were booing and the ones that clapped for him. But like I said, they have the right to express their opinion. I think the first thing they did is give credit to Steven Gerrard one more time for the player he's been for this club. Then they sung for Conor Bradley, who deserved that completely, because he played great, 60, 70 minutes long. Although we had to block the cross with the 2-1, but that I will tell him this week. But he played really well. And then afterwards, yeah, if you tell me it was 60-40, 50-50, 40, I don't know. But what I do know is clapping is not as loud as booing.
And booing there was, by many. The thing is, did he deserve that? What did we witness? Did we witness something of a trashy Trent reaction? Many fans getting in touch, not just Liverpool fans, 81089. There's Ash, a Newcastle fan. I think Liverpool fans are truly, truly pathetic, the ones who booed. Instead of applauding him, celebrating the title, they're showing all this vitriol towards one of their own who has won everything with them. They have to grow up. He's going to get used to it. So, at the end of the day, Simon, the reaction surprised me, I've got to say, when I watched the game live and I heard what I heard. Where do you stand on this? Where do you think?
Well, it has been an endless media conversation.
Liverpool fans are going with this.
Well, it has been an endless media conversation for the last 2 or 3 weeks. So it doesn't surprise me that the fans have alighted upon it and formulated a slightly more strident opinion than perhaps they would have had if it wasn't a constant subject dawn till dusk on every radio show. But the fact of the matter is that if they're entitled to praise and applaud, they're entitled to boo. I think it's a graceless and witless way to be, but if that's what they think they want to do to a player, I mean,
graceless and witless.
Well, it is graceless, isn't it? I mean, I don't know whether it's steeped in the psyche that some of the fans will think that he's had them over because he's gone on a free transfer, and there's an argument to be said there. And you know, Martin Keown's father, Arsene Wenger, has talked about the idea that we'll not see top players going for top fees anymore. They'll orchestrate these kind of things ad infinitum because it benefits them in the longer game. He talks about that in various discussions that he has. But I mean, I look at it and say, when did it become an obligation upon a player? I mean, we were talking briefly about Keegan being at Liverpool. He didn't come through their academy. He came from Scunthorpe, but he left in '77, was replaced by Dalglish. The one thing that goes on is the club. And the one thing that Liverpool will do will go on, and they'll continue to be successful because they're a great football club. I don't know what it says about their fan base. Well, they think they're entitled to boo a player. Yeah, I mean, but they are entitled to do as they please.
Right. Before you start, Martin, there's Tony, a Liverpool fan. He can't play again this season, and almost certainly can't be on the open-top bus parade. Tony, give us, if that really is your view, and if that's the view of others, come on and tell us why you think that. 03717 223344. Martin.
That's a very shallow approach. And just, what I want to say firstly is, I mean, we're going off on this topic, but Liverpool have been worthy champions this year. Fantastic football. The way that they stormed from their own box to the opposition's area, 6 players on the attack in front of goal, been absolutely brilliant. And I know we're going off on a tangent here, but we do need to talk about this issue. I want to say that Trent Alexander-Arnold, I thought he was magnificent yesterday, the way that he accepted the reaction of the fans. He didn't, offer up the ear and say, oh, okay, he just like, okay, this is what you want to present to me. I can only give my best. I think he's one of those where, because he's the fan on the pitch, a local lad, done well, they live it through him, and they desperately wanted him to be there. And I think he has to almost give him a false pardon, really, because he loves that club. Of course he loves that club. He always will. It'll always be his club. But professionally, he's taking his show to another club. He's going to do another experience, another continent. He wants to go and experience something else. He's won everything in the game.
And what's wrong with that?
And he can walk the streets of Liverpool, a very proud man. And he should be allowed to do that. It's happened in the past. You like Sir Keegan Dalglish replaced him. The players though at Liverpool, they're heroes, they're gods, aren't they? The Barneses and the Hansons and all these guys over the years. And Trent is one of those, and he will be forever, Jim. And I just think it was one of those things where
coming to the peak of his career now, isn't he? And so
I don't think it's helped though that other former players have like a bit of incendiary to sort of say, well, which player do you want to be compared to? Do you want to be compared to Gerrard? Or do you want to be compared to McManaman? By the way, both players were equally brilliant for Liverpool, and how you judge the two. And I think that maybe the fans think, hold on, how does anyone ever want to leave Liverpool? Well, do you know what? There's news for you, that people do want to experience new things, and he is a top talent, and I really wish him well actually on his journey now at Real Madrid.
Listen, on the other side of the argument, and I don't want to sit on both sides of the fence, he made his choice. He's chosen to run his contract down. And he's not responsible for Liverpool not wanting to take a £20 million bid for him in January, granted. But he's run his contract down, so we know that the beneficiary of that is going to be him. And so if a few or a section or a large proportion of Liverpool fans inside a football stadium want to... This is an emotional business. Yeah. The reasons why footballers are rewarded so well in such an illogical way is because emotion fuels the business of this sport, which drives the broadcasters to want to pay the money that they do, which turns it into the commercial opportunity. So you can't have all the emotion that gives you the rewards from a football and then be unhappy that it comes back the other way. Do I think it's right? No, I think it's graceless. I think Liverpool should want their fans to be better than that. And I'm sure that they'll have their own view on it and their own sense of entitlement. And of course, we see the Liverpool fans boo the national anthem. We see that if you utter certain characteristics towards Liverpool, you have to watch your step or you'll be in trouble, because you can't say that about Liverpool fans. So you have to be careful how you describe this football club. I wonder what Klopp would have said. Would he have been stronger? Well, I don't know what he'd have said. I mean, ultimately, the boys made his decision. The fans wanted to boo it. Yeah. And that's their prerogative.
And you've got that booing graceless and witless.
Well, it is a little bit, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
It is really. Steeped in entitlement.
Many Liverpool fans getting in touch. One of the first callers is Joe, who's through to us. So, Joe, I'll put you on the spot. Good afternoon. Were you one of those who booed Alexander-Arnold when he came on?
I was, Jim, to be fair, and I don't understand why does he have the right to choose a football club and go where he wants to go, but the fans can't have a choice between whether they want to boo or not. I just don't get that. For me, he's not, when you compare him to the likes of Gerrard, who's a diehard Liverpool fan and stayed when he had the options to go to Chelsea. He's just not at that level. So the fans have the right to decide whether they want to boo or not. I don't understand why people go crazy about this.
What do you think about his contribution to your club, Joe?
Yeah, great, fantastic, and I'm sure when it comes to the last game of the season, I'm sure we'll all give him applaud and say thank you for your time and goodbye. But
why didn't you do that yesterday?
Well, because I just think as someone who's a Liverpool fan, he shouldn't have left the way he has. It's as simple as that. I don't understand why people think that's very difficult to understand.
So how did you want him to leave?
Well, he should have signed a contract, and we should have got something, you know.
But he says, Joe, it's his personal journey. You get that, don't you?
It is his.
It's not yours. It's not mine.
And look,
it's his.
It's a professional working career. He has the right to do what he wants to do, just like the rest of us. But so does the fans who pay hard-earned cash to go and watch the players. They have the right to choose to boo the player.
Joe, thanks for your call. Here's Anthony, another Liverpool fan who wants to join us. Do you agree with Joe, Anthony? Where do you stand in this?
Are you talking to me now?
That's you, Anthony. Yeah. Good afternoon.
Sorry, fella. Okay, hi. Hello, fella. Yeah, I'm a massive Liverpool fan. Family all from Liverpool. Very staunch, protective about Liverpool and everything like that, although I live in the south. I think it's disgusting that people booed him. I really do. I've got a real thing about this. I think people, the Glasgows on the line who said, he's entitled to boo. No, he's not. I totally disagree with that. I think if you want to give your ticket up, fella, there are thousands on the day and millions worldwide who give their right arm for your ticket. Whether you pay for it or not is by your privilege that you're lucky enough to get the chance to get a ticket to Liverpool play. And I just feel I'm so strongly against people booing the club. Have been so proud of being a Liverpool fan and Liverpool fans in general over the years, apart from booing the national anthem, I totally disagree with, or singing "You'll Never Walk Alone" through it. But I think that the point I'm making is that you're there to support your team. If you think you're paying their wages, you're not. Because the people who are paying the wages are people who are paying millions and millions, all the commercial partners, the TV people, the supporters. They're called supporters. They're supposed to be there to support their team. That's my point.
Anthony, I mean, Simon called it graceless and witless. Do you think we witnessed a trashy reaction to Trent Alexander-Arnold coming on yesterday?
Yes, I do, totally. He's been a brilliant servant. We didn't pay anything for him in the first place. Yes, we developed him. I think it was disgusting. I agree with everything Simon said about Liverpool through and through, actually. Although I defend Liverpool to the end of the earth, but certain things are indefensible. This is one of them.
Now we know that Sheffield United have reached the Championship playoff final, and they well and truly dispatched Bristol City in record-breaking fashion. They were 3-0 up, Simon, from the first leg. They won 3-0 last night, 6-0 on aggregate. Yeah. I mean, my God, one-sided to say the least. They are sending out a message, aren't they? Yeah. Either Coventry tonight or Sunderland are going to have to be at their very best come Wembley to get past Sheffield United, I think.
Yeah. I mean, look, there's a school of thought which says how you go into the playoffs is often what sort of fist you make of it. And if you look at the form guide for the four sides that have been in the playoffs, and I know that Bristol City are now out, but if you look at I always look at the last quarter of a season to give you some sort of indication as to where you are. And if you look at Sheffield United in the last 10 matches, they'll have finished 7th in the league. You look at Coventry, they'll have finished 13th, Bristol City 17th, and Sunderland 19th. So there's no surprise that Bristol City going into this game were not tipped, and they weren't tipped by the bookies, and subsequently their form. But I think, look, they should have made a better fist of it for their fans.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, I remember us, Palace, and I hate to make everything about what I may have done, but we went into the playoffs against Watford in 2006. We got relegated the previous season. We were tipped to go back up. We'd done Watford twice in the league. We went in there. We got smashed. We got smashed 3-0 at home. And we played out a tepid 0-0 game that was just nothing away at Vicarage Road.
Yeah.
So there are instances where teams go into these competitions.
Yeah.
But I would imagine if you're a Bristol City fan and you've gotten bashed to pieces 3-0, which was what we did, and it was young Ashley Young that did the damage to us at Selhurst Park.
Yeah.
And we went to the second game anticipating a better outcome. Andy Johnson was a week fitter for that game, but we didn't land a glove on them. But they've got done 3-0, 3-3. And in fairness, the point I'm making is the approach to this.
Yeah.
The mental application that's required to go into the playoffs, because Sheffield United would have the luxury or the disadvantage of being 22 points clear of Bristol City in the league, but having snatched defeat from the jaws of victory by not getting an automatic playoff spot. And how the manager handles the players and turns it into an opportunity rather than, look what we could have won.
Right.
Automatically.
Absolutely.
And that's what he appears to have done.
Well, I'm saying Sheffield United look good for the final, Championship playoff final at Wembley. But here's the thing. Did you know this? I didn't. Sheffield United's previous 9 attempts in playoffs have all ended in failure, including Championship and League One playoff finals, that is. They last won at Wembley back in 1925. The fact of the matter is, though, they go again, and Chris Wilder's delighted about that.
That was tough. I don't think the scoreline really represented the challenge, because they're an awkward side. You know, when obviously we found out on the Saturday we were playing against them, the 2 games that we had against them were really awkward. But everybody talks about, you know, winning at Wembley. I've got to say, my preference would be to go up automatically, but that's off the table because of an outstanding season by Burnley and Leeds United to get 100 points. But we haven't been too far behind them, you know, we've overcome a lot of challenges, and it's been a pretty positive season for the football club. And to round it off with a Wembley win will be magical for everybody. But still got to do the business and get the job done.
Spoke well there, with a bit of humility, because Leeds and Burnley have blasted everybody out of sight.
Well, he's got not a lot of choice. He's turning a sow's ear into a silk purse, because they did choke at the end of the season. They did have an opportunity, Sheffield United, and it probably was supplemented with my tipping them, because the moment I tip anybody, whatever you do, whatever Simon Jordan backs anything, back the opposite thing. Yeah. But Sheffield United, the amount of points they've got to finish third is commendable, but they did have an opportunity. And the other sides, besides Burnley's form was just endless, on and on. No one can score against them. Yeah. But Leeds were on the wobble, and Sheffield United didn't take advantage of it. So what he's got to do is go, that's irrelevant now. We are third in the league by a mile. Yeah, we've done most of these sides. They've taken 4 points off Bristol City. I think they've beaten them in the corresponding fixtures and drawn. So Bristol City had landed no gloves on them. So they are where they should be. Right. And in fairness to him, you know, I don't always agree with his approach and his outlook, but he has galvanised this team. He does know this club. Yeah. And he knows it very well. And, you know, whether you should be singing Mind the Gap when you beat Sheffield Wednesday and things like that, that's a debate in some people's minds.
I know what you mean.
But he's done his job, and I would be surprised if Sheffield United don't get promoted.
Okay, up the Blades. Will they get to the promised land? We shall see. Sheffield United fans, how are you feeling this morning? I reckon pretty darn good. But that record that I mentioned earlier, don't want to water down your achievement thus far. Sheffield United's previous 9 attempts in playoffs have all ended in failure. Is this the one that's going to change that and take you up to the promised land? 81089 if you want to send me a message on that. Incidentally, just before we leave this and we're heading to the first break, your friend and mine, Chief Executive at the EFL, Trevor Birch. We love Trevor. We like Trevor a lot. I'm not sure what he's on about here. Did the EFL get their authentic football in the League One playoff semi-final that they're craving? Stockport host Leyton Orient tomorrow night. The tie's level at 2-2. I don't know if you saw it, Simon. Leyton Orient took the lead at Stockport. Charlie Kelman slotted in, despite standing in a clear offside position, almost 2 to 3 yards offside. I mean, honestly, he was so offside it didn't bear thinking about. But of course, no VAR. Says Trevor, from a league perspective, we like to think that it's authentic football. People like to see players being able to celebrate a goal. They want to celebrate a goal. It's refreshing to just watch the game, knowing whatever the decision is, if the assistant hasn't put their flag up, it's going to stand one way or the other. No, hang on.
Well,
hang on, Trevor.
But I mean,
with a situation like that,
they've got they have VAR in a playoff final, don't they?
In the final, yeah.
Yeah, so how's the authentic football working for the Football League in that instance then? This is about the economics of what it costs to put... Now, Trevor's got to polish the proverbial turd, which is the Football League can't afford the consequences of putting VAR in 72 stadiums around the country. What it should be is a responsibility of the governance of the game. It should be the FA and the resources that they take from the game, the league levies and all the money that comes in from the FA Cup and whatever else they get their money from, should be redistributed to make sure that there's no less importance in an outcome in a League One, League Two or Championship game than there is in a Premier League game.
Precisely.
So what Trevor will do, in the same way that the Football League was happy to have the old geezer with the rattle as part of its advertising campaign when Sky was broadcasting the Championship games, as a way of saying this is our USP. Our USP is authenticity. Yeah. He knows, Trevor, that the better outcome is to have better outcomes.
So he's not really being authentic with this, is he? He's not being genuine.
What he's doing
and we like you, Trevor.
What he's doing is highlighting a USP. There's no point turning around and saying we're the poor relation. Yeah. He can't turn around and say we're the runt of the litter. No. Our games are less important. He has to say, hold on a minute. Now, the fans in those divisions will say, and have said repeatedly, we love the idea of the fact that we've still got what we think is authentic football. Yeah. But when you get bad outcomes, people don't appreciate it. I didn't appreciate bad outcomes in the Championship when I was in the Championship.
I'm
because
sure you
technology
didn't.
wasn't there.
Yeah.
And really you don't. But it's incumbent upon the technology to be better than it is, so it becomes almost seamless. But it's also incumbent upon the game to provide the finances so that everybody in professional football has the same outcomes based upon the same criteria. Difficulty is you've got to upscale the amount of people that do VAR.
Yeah.
It's also got a long way to go.
Here's the thing. Maybe Evangelos Marinakis, the owner of Nottingham Forest, Simon, had a point. We know what happened at the weekend.
He had a point.
When, Marinakis...
It's how he exhibited that point.
Sure.
Is in question.
Marinakis went on the pitch at the end of the game against Leicester 2-2. It looked as if he wasn't happy. Maybe that Forest, as players, had thrown away 2 valuable points at that particular time of the season. Maybe something else. This was the something else. You'll probably remember that Taiwo Awoniyi collided with a post late on and received lengthy treatment after the collision, but then returned to play. Now, there was a misunderstanding, according to Nuno Espirito Santo, with the coaching and medical staff regarding the delay in which it took to get Awoniyi back on. But now we hear the same time Taiwo Awoniyi had urgent surgery late last night after sustaining a serious abdominal injury in that moment, in that match against Leicester on Sunday. Nuno spoke about the miscommunication.
Comes for the situation that unfortunately in the last 10 minutes we had one man less, with situation of the not able to give us a hand to the team, to help the team because they were too much in pain, and that's because that came from a bad communication between departments, our coaching staff and medical department. That they had the info of one thing, it proceeds, we make the sub. Unfortunately we then have another stoppage time. And after that, I think 30,000 people that were in the stadium were really, really upset, rightly so.
So the incident itself, Awoniyi and the Leicester midfielder Facundo Buonanotte collided with the post. And now, as it turns out, it's a serious injury as far as Awoniyi is concerned. It happened after Anthony Elanga was allowed to advance in on goal despite being clearly offside. So in other words, had the linesman flagged early, which doesn't happen these days, the move would have broken down and these two wouldn't have collided with the post. But they collided with the post, and what do you know? In the current setup, the linesman then flags. We'll get to that, Simon.
Yeah.
But regards the mix-up, really, the misunderstanding with the medical staff.
Yeah, that's not good enough.
Whether or not to put Awoniyi back on. Yeah. Evangelos Marinakis had a point, didn't he?
No one disputes he has a point. No one's disputed that. He made that point quite clear himself yesterday, and he wasn't particularly empathetic towards his coaching staff. He made it in his statement that there was a mix-up between the coaching staff and between the physio and the coaching staff, and he was frustrated with it. And I don't disagree with it. I don't disagree with anything he said, and I don't disagree with anything Nuno Espirito Santo said. And I don't disagree with the debate that actually brings the offside rule into question. None of that is relevant to the way that the owner chooses to behave. I'm not in the camp of condemning people for changing the way that things operate, because when we remember 25 years ago, apparently the best football club owners are the ones that you never heard from. So now you've got a new breed of owner. You've got a new idea about ownership. Owners should be emotive. They should be invested. They should be at the football stadium. They shouldn't take money out, right? But also, apparently, according to the sage-like wisdom of certain pundits, they also are not allowed anywhere near the pitch. Now, when do things change? I'm not suggesting it's right or wrong. I don't care whether Marinakis...
You wouldn't have done it. You wouldn't have gone.
No, I wouldn't have done it. No, I wouldn't have done it. And I'm demonstrative. And I'm quite capable of being upfront. But I don't think there's any benefit in doing that. I can control my frustrations. And there was, with due respect to Marinakis, his investment in Nottingham Forest is not because he was born next to the stadium and his father had played for their youth team and grew up supporting this football club and tipped a vast proportion of his money into it. His emotional investment is to it because it's a football investment that he's grown to appreciate.
Yeah.
So if he can't control himself,
right,
then that's upon him. I think he has every right to go in there and say, you know, Christ on a bike, can you not get it right in a game like this? You're the physio. Why would you have conveyed the wrong information to the manager? That's a conversation you don't need to have in front of the glares of the camera. Now, I don't care about optics, but it brings about conversations like this that are unnecessary.
Right.
I don't think that Marinakis should be spitting at officials or spitting in their facility. But he operates the way he does. He's a very successful businessman. There are people that alleged about certain aspects of his business dealings, but the way that he conducts himself around the football club is you do have to be a standard bearer.
Yeah.
The Forest fans will say, oh, I love all that. If your bleeding team was sitting at the bottom of the league, you'd have something to say about it. Because right now, you've got to have the same standards that you're winning with and as you lose with.
Right.
And it's not necessary.
Yeah.
It wasn't necessary for that load of old fanny that Phil Brown did on the pitch years ago with the Hull players. That wasn't necessary either. That's not genuine. That's inauthentic. Now, I'm not suggesting that Marinakos' outburst was inauthentic, because I think that Marinakos thinks he does as he wants. And there's an element, if you pay the price, you possibly can. But I think there's a standard of operating, and I don't think that's the right way to operate.
Okay.
I'm not condemning him for doing it. I'm saying I don't like it personally.
You know the situation where the linesman flags late, Simon? The move is allowed to run down. It peters out no matter the outcome. For VAR purposes, then late on, at the end of it all, the linesman either flags or doesn't flag. There's a great point from Nick in Halifax. If the assistant had done his job and put the flag up because the player was offside, he would not have collided with the post. So he could well have picked up a serious injury and could well miss the rest of the season. I think that's highly likely with so little of the season left. It's time for the flag to go straight up when the player's offside, and then you ignore this. So the linesman did his job as per the rules.
Yeah. And so,
should there be a rule change?
Well, there should be an efficiency in the offside rule that takes it to a fully automated process where the offsides aren't debated, are instantaneously, in the same way that goal detection systems, we should have we don't currently. So we have to look at the reality of what this creates. We know in this instance that the reasons why the linesmen don't put flags up is because in a situation where there's debate, you take away goal scoring opportunity, and that's not what they're trying to do.
Right.
And that's the problem that VAR has created, because it's taken away the opportunity for people to. And by the way, we know that they're not allowed to make mistakes, because if the linesman had flagged and he'd have been onside after review, in this instance, I know there's a margin that could be debated about how the competency of the linesman's outlook should have been.
Right.
But if he'd have been onside, there'd have been outrage, but there'd have been an injury that might have been saved. It's silly. People make mistakes. VAR, to complete this perfect circle of how it embraces the game, we need automation, because otherwise you're going to have this argument. I think the rule has reason behind it. It wasn't sat there and hatched up by a bunch of buffoons that don't understand the workings of the game.
Yeah.
On the IFAB committee, there are people. We've seen it before. We've seen Figo in there. We've seen Marco van Basten in there, who apparently wanted to abolish the offside rule full stop. But we've had this collective thinking, and the reasons why the linesmen don't flag is because there'll be times when it's obvious and times when it's not so. And how many times have we seen the so-called pundits sitting there going, oh, no way that's penalty, no way that's onside, and then actually it comes back as onside, then it's statistically proven or digitally proven, and then they accept it.
Right.
In this instance, it's produced an outcome that people can now say, oh, the law's an ass. But there's a reason why the law is an ass,
Of
because
course.
it's an imperfect circle.
We wish Taiwo Awoniyi well. Urgent surgery last night after a serious abdominal injury in that match against Leicester. There's Ben, one of many Forest fans. Marinakis, Simon, actually grew up as a fan of Forest because of what they achieved in Europe. He didn't just buy it because it was any old club, says Ben, the Forest fan.
Oh, really? So you've done a deep dive into his family tree, and ultimately you know that he's what he's a fan is a feta cheese.
The talking has well and truly started, hasn't it? The Europa League final. It's got such significance, Simon, because it features Tottenham, 17th in the Premier League, against Manchester United, 16th in the Premier League. The talking has started for a whole bunch of reasons, not least that the winner goes straight into the Champions League next season. For whatever reason, Tottenham decided to go early, and they held a pre-Europa League final press gathering, and Ange Postecoglou, of course, spoke at that. And this was Ange on what this trophy, and remember Ange has said, I always win a trophy in my second season. This is Ange on what a trophy might be in terms of a turning point for Tottenham.
When you look at the historical backdrop of this club and what it's sort of been on for the last 20 odd years, I feel like it could be a turning point in terms of the way the club is perceived, but also more how it perceives itself, which is, I think, the biggest thing. That's the hurdle this club has to overcome, because it'll always be there. Until you actually do it, then you're fair game for people to say, well, you've always kind of fluffed it on the big stage. So irrespective of what the opposition say or what anyone else says. What you've got to try and do is break that cycle. And it's not like I took over a team that finished third. It was constantly in that, echelon. I mean, the year before I took over, we were 8th. We weren't even in Europe. Didn't even qualify for Europe. So it wasn't like. So it's not just been a, kind of okay. This is the final bit. My view was that's what I'll get judged on. Like I said, I could have been sitting here 5th last year, 5th this year. And maybe maybe people wouldn't be waiting for the white smoke to see if it's my last one, but they'd still be saying, Ange, that's great, but that's all been done before. Until this club wins something, then you haven't really made an impact. So I kind of knew that for however long my tenure last year, that's what it's going to be judged and measured on. So we've got ourselves an opportunity.
I think there's two things here, Simon. In terms of the timing of this, as a club, Tottenham have got to win it. In terms of Ange Postecoglou, Ange has got to be seen to manage Tottenham to winning it in Bilbao. But after all the criticism and the backlash and the protest, and there's been so much conversation about it, who would a trophy offer a bigger vindication for? Postecoglou or Levy at Tottenham?
Both, I suspect. I think it takes a proverbial monkey off their backs. Does it fix the overriding assertion that is Postecoglou going to take you in the direction of travel that gets you more success? I mean, let's have it right. You win this Europa League, you replace the 40 million quid that you've lost from not finishing anywhere vaguely resembling where Tottenham would have been anticipating they might have finished, by getting into the Champions League the following season. So whatever budgeting Spurs would have had to be able to make sure that their cost base and their stadium financing and all the things that in the longer game will benefit them have just been replaced by the fact they finished 12 places below in the league.
Yeah.
The question is that will abound is does it keep Postecoglou in a job? I think finishing 17th in the Premier League is really poor. I think doing well in a cup competition gives you an argument to suggest that you pulled something out of a season and kills one particular argument, which is Spurs can't win trophies, and it will negate some of the conversations. For me, does it give you the faith that what actually Postecoglou is doing is going to bring you success next year? And that's the question that I think is going to be answered, irrespective of whether he wins or loses, because I'm not sure he can. I'm not sure. I like him. I liked him a lot. I think if you really look at the analysis of what he's done, I think he got off to a flying start. You know what first impressions do? They last the longest. So the first impression of Ange Postecoglou was he was a breath of fresh air. We got rid of the darkness of Conte and Mourinho. We got rid of the inappropriate fit that was Nuno Espirito Santo for the way he plays and the way Tottenham would like to see themselves playing. And we got this revolutionary, free-speaking, brave Ange Postecoglou, who's turned out, in my view, to be a slightly more sophisticated Ozzy Ardiles. And I really like Ange, and I really want him to be successful. But when you look at this team's performance this year in the league, it's not good enough. And great that you've gone into competition. I mean, let's have it right. If you've got Bodo Glimt in the semi-final of a cup competition, this tells you that this is not a great cup competition. So with respect to the two teams that are in it, they're finishing 16th and 17th in the league. This idea that they could have got relegated, they weren't going to get relegated. It wasn't going to happen they're going to get relegated because the teams beneath them were so dreadful. And I suspect perhaps if the teams beneath them were a little bit better and pushed them a bit harder, they might have focused more on the league.
Right. So what you're telling me this lunchtime is next week, even if they win in Bilbao and they come back with this thing, it's time up for Ange.
Well, I think it's challenging to look at the belief. It's not about what you do now, because of course it is about what we do now, because that's the moment, that's the way the world that we live in.
Yeah.
But it's then about what happens next. And if I'm trying to transport myself into Daniel's thinking, I would think that there's not a lot of confidence. There's just as many questions as there is answers provided. And 2 years into your relationship with the manager, there should be less questions and more confidence. And this team this year, his interactions with the media, I understand why he interacts the way he does, but I don't think it helps anything. I think the way that the players play, you're hearing it now. Danny says it quite regularly, and I do listen to Danny Murphy a lot about what goes on the field because I think he's a brilliant observer. They do look tactically inept They do look like they're a side that only knows one thing, which is to go forward. And if there's any challenges in transition or in defensive outcomes, they don't have a clue. And I do think that they've been poor. And the excuses that have come out from Ange about whether they've had a full team, whether they've had this challenge, that challenge, now it's moved on to, it's clearly evident to everybody the reasons why they've been unsuccessful is because they've played in Europe. I think that's cobblers. I think finishing 17th in the league is poor. The interesting thing for me is people like you going to games and coming back and saying, they're not having him.
Yeah.
So I would be pleasantly surprised for him if, irrespective of how the outcome is that he's still in the job next year.
I've got one final one for you today, and you know Daniel Levy, and a lot of the callers call in knowing that you know Daniel, and if I may say, you often take him up on his invitation to come and join him at a match. Would it ratify the Levy approach that ambition and success can be achieved in a sustainable way?
Does it ratify it? Well, you're finishing. His belief system would be that the Premier League is your bread and butter, and obviously you get revenues from that. You get an opportunity to compete in competitions. You try to be successful in them. They've had a League Cup semi-final this year. They got done by Liverpool. They won the first leg. They got done by a better side in the League Cup semi-final. They've got an opportunity to win a Europa League. They'll take it. They'll take it because it gives them an opportunity to get into Europe, and it probably surpasses the opportunity that they might have thought they were going to get, which is getting there naturally by finishing fifth in the league. So they'd rather have both, wouldn't they? They'd rather finish fifth in the league, get 35 million worth of merit payments for the positions in the league and the Champions League money, rather than get the Europa League and then supplement what you've lost as a result of not finishing high in the Premier League by qualifying to the Champions League. Yeah. I don't know if it ratifies anything. I mean, the argument is if I think Daniel has built a magnificent spaceship. I really do. I think there may well be needing a change of captain, not because Daniel Levy isn't capable, because where's the cash coming from? Even Stefan has now come around to my way of thinking that it doesn't matter what PSR does with Tottenham. If you haven't got the cash, then how are you going to do it? And Daniel has never professed to be a billionaire or to have the cash himself. His worth is in Tottenham. When someone comes and buys Tottenham, then Daniel will be very wealthy as a result of it.
Yeah. It's Jim White, it's Simon Jordan and Chris Blackhurst, author of The World's Biggest Cash Machine, Manchester United, the Glazers and the Struggle for Football Soul. Chris, of course, is no stranger to big things in the world of journalism. Former editor of The Independent, former city editor of the London Evening Standard. So this man knows what he's talking about and says what he means and means what he says. And we are going over 2 decades of the Glazers' ownership. We've got 1 or 2 questions we want to throw in to Chris before he leaves us. You have a huge number of questions on the Glazers for Chris Blackhurst and for Simon, and there's no difference there on a daily basis. So why not? 03717223344. If you have a question, either as a football neutral or, of course, as a Manchester United fan, about the Glazers and their style of ownership and what they've done since they've been in since 20 years, then now's the time to bring it to air. Joe, big United fan, you're up first. What would you like to ask us? Good morning.
Good morning, gents. You touched upon it earlier about the genesis of all of this and the Glazers taking over the club. I've always thought and have a strong belief that Alex Ferguson's greed over the Rock of Gibraltar played a very big part in this. Am I right in thinking this?
Short answer is yes. That led to the falling out with the Irish shareholders, John Magnier and JP McManus, and at the time they were the biggest shareholders in the club, and that caused a war. And effectively, the Glazers were able to step into the middle and buy up all the shares, and then, of course, Magnier and McManus, their coup de grace. The fatal blow was that they sold the Murdoch stake, their shares, to the Glazers, and that gave them control of the club. And that all stemmed from Sir Alex wanting a share of the stud rights, stud fees to Rock of Gibraltar.
Joe, before you leave us, do you think the Glazers have got anything right?
Well, to be fair, they've always provided more than enough money for the managers. They've just not employed the right people at the top above the managers, and the managers have wasted the money. I've not had an issue with them. Yes, I have an issue now because the club is a shambles, unfortunately. But they provided money. They generated money.
And you wouldn't disagree with that, Simon? Here's Simon, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, they've needed to provide money. I mean, the fact they've been able to uptick the revenues goes towards servicing the debt and the dividends, and that's the privilege that they put themselves in by the position that they pull. When you want to have a look at people, you can look at other shareholders. The shareholders, when people are pointing at the Glazers, what they did, all the other shareholders sold them their shares. So let's get it right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. David, you're a big Manchester United fan. Good morning. What would you like to ask us?
Yeah, okay, good morning. Thank you. My season ticket, a pensioner season ticket, last year was 447. This year, it's now 769. I'll have to pay it by Friday.
Oh.
So that was under the Glazers 447, but under Ineos, it's now 769.
Well, if I could step in there, it's still under the Glazers.
It's still under the Glazers. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, but I'd make the point that, unfortunately, and I make the point in the book, look, I'm a season ticket holder at Fulham. I sit in the Johnny Haynes stand. I don't sit in the Smart Riverside stand. In the technical language of football ownership, I'm a legacy fan. And legacy is a dirty word in business. It means bricks and mortar and old-fashioned shops. You are sadly a legacy fan, and you don't make enough money for the club. What they want are the tourist fans, people who buy day tickets, who turn up and bring the kids, spend a lot of money, eat at the ground, drink at the ground, and go to the mega store and spend hundreds of pounds. Those are the people they really want, and they get far more money out of them, sadly, than they do out of the likes of you and me.
Okay, correct. May I come on that? In front of me in the stadium, there's always 6 seats in front of me for Scandinavian people, as you said, tourists.
Yeah, well, I have the same experience. I don't want to bang on about Fulham, but I have exactly the same experience at Fulham, where I hear American accents all around me and people coming in, and blocks of seats. In a sense, it's the future. The sadness is that they're ignoring the genuine, I hate to use the word genuine, the time-honoured fans who love the club with a passion, and it's their life, and they put them alongside friends and family as the things they really care about, and that's the sadness.
Yeah, I think that's not so much a Glazer, Simon, it's a modern-day football issue, isn't it?
Well, when you look at the fact that there's only 4 clubs in the Premier League last year that made money, you look at the reality of what football costs, you look at the implications of it, wait till you get the regulator in, wait till you see what the regulator does, and then you'll start to complain. Yeah. Fan-led review that wanted a regulator, and when the regulator comes on board and we see the changes that happen and we see if there's any money sucked out of the Premier League, wait and see what happens to ticket prices then. Yeah. Then you'll have something to complain about.
Many of you sending me messages, and I'll try and get through a few of them before Chris leaves us. In the meantime, Lee is another United fan. Lee, good morning. What do you want to say?
Yeah, morning, Jim. Morning, Simon.
Morning.
And,
morning.
Your other guest, can't remember his name.
Chris Blackhurst, the author.
Chris, I do apologise. I've been a lifelong supporter since '72. And whilst I don't like the Glazers, I don't blame them for the demise of United. I really don't. I blame them for the people they've appointed and the complete inept 13 years of dross that we have watched. But, most of the players that we have bought over the last 13-odd years are not fit to wear the United shirt, and we've lost the identity of United. But the Glazers are businessmen. They saw an opportunity and they bought it. They should never have been allowed to buy it and saddle us with debt. I blame the FA for that, for allowing businesses to buy football clubs and then saddle them with debt. But they did. They've provided millions of pounds over the years to the club, and we have wasted it.
Is that true? How much truth is there in that, Chris?
There's a lot of truth in that. I mean, they've made some very, very poor appointments, and they've been poorly served by the people running the club. I mean, United, in a sense, is in a cleft stick. And I don't know what Simon would say about this, but one thing I came across in writing the book and talking to people in football was that if you're a player, if you're an agent, if I'm going to say Crystal Palace just because he's sitting here. But if Crystal Palace say they're interested, that's one thing. And the agent thinks of a fee and thinks of a price. And if Manchester United say they're interested, that's a different thing altogether. And I think United, in a sense, was a victim of its own success under Ferguson. They'd had all these years of success. It wasn't repeated immediately under David Moyes. And that's the downhill started from there.
Right.
And they forget that the rebuilding, Ferguson came very close to being fired. He was on his last legs. Suddenly he got these players, he got Cantona, we all know the history. It turned around, the class of 92, and they enjoyed this fantastic success. But the sense of entitlement at United, which is not replicated elsewhere at most clubs, it is at one or two, the Arsenals, Liverpool, etc. But the sense of entitlement is profound.
Chris, I'm coming to you in a second. Many of you asking me to ask Chris this Chris in the studio this morning. Brian, there's James, there's Tom, all United fans. Does Chris Blackhurst have any idea what pleasure the Glazers actually get in being at the top of Manchester United Football Club?
Well, I give three very quick answers to that. I'm told they were going to see me and then didn't, but I'm told they love the club with a passion. Joel and Avram, certainly Joel, they watch the games. His office is meant to be a shrine to United. I'm told that's the case. That's one thing. Second thing is, if you can define pleasure as taking money out, and the pleasure of living off the back of United, they've enjoyed a lot of money out of United. That's why I call it the world's biggest cash machine. It's an adapted quote from Paul Parker, the former player. And the other thing I'd say is that they have been able to use United as a global calling card. Avram Grant appeared at Davos, where the world business leaders and politicians go every year.
Yeah.
They tried to buy an Indian cricket team, an IPL cricket team. They've expressed an interest in Formula One. That's all on the back of United. It's not Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It's Manchester United.
Right. Got you. Chris is a Manchester United fan, and you're through, and I think this is where I find our call.
I'm not a Manchester United.
Not this
Must
Chris.
be another Chris.
Not this Chris. This Chris. Chris, good morning.
Hi. Hi, thanks for taking my call. I just wanted to ask two questions, really. How real was the desire to sell United by the Glazers when Jim Radcliffe came in? And was the bid from the Saudis real, tangible bid?
I think the Qataris, he means. I think the Qataris were in, weren't they?
I think the desire was real, but I think the price they were seeking, which was really... it only became real. Their desire to sell only hardened when Chelsea did their deal. When Abramovich's ownership of United, of Chelsea, went to Todd Browley, and they saw what Todd Browley was paying, they did the maths, and it wasn't difficult. I mean, Chelsea is not, Chelsea fans won't like me saying this, but Chelsea is not as big a club as Manchester United. And if Chelsea went for X, then United is worth a lot more. And that really hardened thinking. The second thing is the Qatari bid was very real, genuinely real. I still think there could still be interest from there. They've not gone away. That's what I keep being told. As long as United remain the biggest club. And that depends on the reach and the social media reach and the sponsorship deals.
What is the number the Glazers want?
Well, I think it's changed over time. I mean, certainly 6 billion at the time. Ratcliffe paid top of my head, he paid about 1 billion, but he got no control. They have control. They want a lot more than that. And if they were to get the new stadium, well, that would enhance it even further. Whether that's realistic or not, I don't know. I mean, Simon points out there's a new regulator coming in and football's tightening all the time. You've got the financial fair play rules. Life has become a lot more difficult. So but it depends on that global reach.
Right.
I mean, they quote a figure of 1.1 billion people in the world who follow Manchester United. I mean, frankly, that's inconceivable. That's 1 in 7 of the world's population. I mean, come on. But even if it's in the hundreds of millions, which is more realistic, that's still, at the moment, and I hesitate, at the moment, that is the emphasis there. At the moment, they're still higher than other clubs. Only Real Madrid, I think, can come close.
Okay.
But they have to regain success. Because I would say that, saying it again, if you're a kid, you're looking for a team to support. Do you want to back a losing team, or do you want to wear the shirt of a winning team? I know the answer. You want to back a winning team.
In a couple of sentences, how important is it for United to win this Europa League final?
I think it's crucial for the good of the club. Put them on a footing. It attracts better players. They'll be back in the Champions League. It's not the best way to do it, and it's controversial. But if they can win that match and get back in the Champions League, suddenly things look a bit rosier. It looks a bit better for the manager. He's won a trophy in his first season and got them into the Champions League, arguably via the back door. But, they're back in the Champions League.
As with Manchester United, the talking goes on. And we've probably spoken a lot more than we maybe predicted we would on the subject. But Chris Blackhurst, can't thank you enough. 20 years of the Glazers' ownership. Thanks to Chris for joining us this morning. You have to think, Simon, the real deal would be the Ancelotti family. I'll get to Davide Ancelotti in a second, son of Carlo. But Carlo Ancelotti has been confirmed as the new manager of Brazil after leaving, or will leave, Real Madrid at the end of this season. And of course, we know who's going the other direction. We know that Xabi Alonso said goodbye to everybody at Bayer Leverkusen, where he is loved, and he's heading to Real Madrid. So Ancelotti will sign a 1-year deal to become the world's highest paid national team coach ahead of the 2026 World Cup.
1 year.
And he replaces Dorival Jr.
And he doesn't want to live in Brazil, does he? He's changed his mind.
Has he?
Yeah, when he was initially approached a couple of years ago, there was this idea that he was going to live in Brazil. Now he's decided, and I listened to Tim Vickery saying this, so I know it's a good source, that he doesn't want to live in Brazil, he wants to live in Europe.
Interesting. Okay, well, you mentioned Tim Vickery, South American correspondent who's something of a regular on our show. He was speaking about this on the appointment of Carlo Ancelotti.
They nearly got Ancelotti a couple of years ago. And in the end, it was internal problems in Brazil's FA that scared him away. Then he was going to live in Brazil. Now he doesn't want to. He wants to live in Europe. And I think the CBF are so desperate that they will have to accede to this request. And that will be very, very controversial here, having not only a foreign coach, but a foreign coach who lives in Europe. And a couple of weeks ago, that seemed like it might be a roadblock that was hard to get over. But I think the desperation of the Brazilian FA to bring in a coach with credibility means that they're probably prepared to waive that one.
So that was Tim Vickery speaking from Rio de Janeiro. Ancelotti, Simon, will become the first foreign national to take charge of Brazil since 1925.
Yeah.
Is it simply a sign of failure when countries choose foreign over one of their own for the national job? Tuchel, England. Elsewhere, the French go French, the Germans go German.
Well, it is a failing of your system of producing top-flight managers to be able to get you to a point where your national side can win things. And ultimately, you feel the necessity to globalise. Everything else is globalised. I'm pretty sure there's huge parts of Brazil that have investment and people in positions of authority, maybe not in the government, of course, and businesses inside those countries that are not necessarily Brazilian. With the legacy of Brazil, with the history of Brazil, and the achievements of Brazil, of course, it's going to be portrayed this way. He is an excellent manager. They are in a funk. They are in a decline. They've just got their heads handed to them by Argentina. Now, of course, he'll compound the issue. And the debate is a good debate. Matthew Letizia has this debate about, in order to qualify for playing for your country, you have to have been from that country. So you should have to be from that country to manage it. That should be, that's one argument. That avoids meritocracy in it, because ultimately you want the best in class.
Do you fall on that side of the argument?
I don't. I don't. I think it's a little bit utopian. I understand the methodology behind it and I understand the reasons for it. I'm in a position where I believe the best in class finds its level. We are the English Premier League in name only. The reasons why the English Premier League is such a domestic and financial powerhouse, because it's got every single investment and every single participant is from other parts of the world. And that's what's given it its cachet and kudos. So whilst we get the benefit of the English Premier League, look at the composition of it. Now, going to the controversy of whether he manages there, which is the point I was making, which I'd heard Tim say yesterday, which was that he's not going to manage and live in Brazil. Well, he's only taken a 1-year gig. Right, so there's only so much. He's only going to get the access to the players so many times. So the optics of what people are going to complain about. If he starts off by beating Brazil, by beating Ecuador and Paraguay and Chile and whoever else they've got to play, it'll disappear back into the ether about whether he's, whether the true tradition of Brazilian football is being replicated. They want to win. Right. Their players are Brazilian. They want to win. And they're more likely to win with Ancelotti than it would appear than they would with one of their own.
Is he the domestic GOAT? Ancelotti, the greatest of all time. I mean, it's often said that Sir Alex, probably the greatest of all time in terms of club management. Is he, or has Ancelotti come in there? When you see Ancelotti's, I mean, 1 Serie A title, 1 Premier League, 1 Liga, 2 La Liga, 1 Bundesliga, 5 Champions Leagues, 5 Super Cups, 3 Club World Cups.
You're as good as your opportunities, aren't you? To some extent, he's been given opportunities on great stages, and he's like
taken it.
Like the Jake Motta, give a stage for that ball to rage. You look at Clough and what Clough did, only nowhere near the level of achievements that this guy's got. But look at the clubs that he managed, and you wonder if Clough had been given enough opportunity. But then you wonder if Clough could have managed a bigger football club because of his disposition. You saw what he did to Leeds United when he went in there and didn't like the structure and fabric of the playing squad.
Yeah.
And the outlook. I mean, I think you have to look at the statistics, and I always like to say, statistics are the beginning of an argument, not the end of it. But this guy is a very, very good manager and has won wherever he's gone. And to be able to manage environments like Real Madrid and other places that he's been in and be successful is a testament. I think you have to put him up there in the conversation with Ferguson, with Guardiola. And if we feel the need to go, who is the aforementioned greatest of all time, I think there's a very sustainable argument that Ancelotti ticks that box.
Well, still on the Ancelottis, at home with the Ancelottis. Can the Ancelotti family provide the answer, Simon, for Rangers? The reason I'm asking you that, last week Dave King spoke to us from Johannesburg, former chairman and shareholder in Rangers, and he was talking that the 49ers could well be in situ with the takeover done by mid-June. Spanish media are reporting that Rangers' next manager will be Davide Ancelotti, son of Carlo. Rangers made no comment on Monday. It's believed that Ancelotti is amongst a number of other names who are being considered. But it was back in 2020 when Davide Ancelotti was working alongside Carlo at Everton that he told me why he had become a coach.
I tried to play. I noticed that my talent was not good enough. My legs didn't do what my head wanted to do. So I decided to stop and study to have a good knowledge of sports science before to start my way to be assistant coach. And then in the future, I want to be a coach.
I mean, Dave King was saying that they're working on the manager situation, obviously, because they want to hit the ground running.
The question is not whether Ancelotti has the chops to take a managerial responsibility, is whether he has the chops to help Rangers overcome Celtic. That's the debate that Rangers have to have with themselves. I remember, and I don't want to put words in people's mouths and cause controversy as a result of it or confrontation, but I remember speaking to a friend of mine, a former director of football at Tottenham Hotspur, and he spoke of the appointment of Ancelotti at Everton, and felt that the seriousness of Ancelotti was sort of exhibited by bringing his son into a coaching position, and it wasn't an outcome that he expected to be particularly advantageous for them.
Right.
And I'm not sure. I mean, if you look at the career of this young man, I'm not doubting the fact that you can come from a background of a personal fitness trainer. I mean, this Christ Mourinho came from being a translator. So let's not get sniffy about what people's qualifications are. But there is an element of, there's a lot of nepotism going on here, isn't there? I mean, there is a lot of jobs being given to this young man as a result of his father's credentials.
Oh, he's followed Carlo everywhere.
Well, this is it.
Yeah.
Now, if I'm Rangers, and I haven't interviewed the fella, so I don't know how charismatic and what his credentials are. But I mean, we've seen people that have given really significant responsibilities. Paul Clement is a great coach. worked under great management at great big football clubs, Bayern Munich and Real Madrid, case in point. Stick him in the dugout as a manager. Not so much.
Right.
So Rangers, why? Why would you take this punt unless he's so impressive? And I do believe, I'm not saying that the only subscription that you have to anything is the credentials of what we've done previously, but we had this ridiculous conversation last year, and I know people will think I bring it up for the point of making a point. I do. If you've got an owner of a football club like the Plymouth guy sitting on here telling us that the Rooney appointment was based upon none of his credentials, what he'd done in the past was of no interest to them, I don't understand that, because ultimately, first-time employment is you take a risk. But this is Rangers. And all of the challenges that Rangers have brought them to this point where the board is in disarray at times, the ownership is changing, the expectations of the club must be rising. Surely you've got a parachute in somebody that's going to go, you see that fellow over there in the other dugout? I can deal with him. As long as you give me some resources and let me match him close to pound for pound, I can get you where you need to be. Can they really unequivocally say somebody that's been ultimately in his father's shadow, has really got appointments on the back of his father's credentials, has the chops to manage a football club at Rangers? I'd have to debate that. Everybody hates Daniel, apparently, and he's a mean-spirited skinflint. And this might be an opportunity to suggest to other people that he's not.
Why can't we look at it as just a good gesture from the manager to say, look, those staff who can't, I'll pay for the families. It's like, well done, Ruben.
I never for 1 second thought that he was on there really berating Nuno Espirito Santos.
No.
I thought Gary Neville's statement was absurd.
He's now gone on the pitch because he's fuming that this player was put back on the pitch because of his welfare. Oh, because
and that's not it.
That's not right.
Yeah. Neville's assertion that they should all go and renegotiate their contracts and should be ashamed of it is just ridiculous. I think it's a pious, sanctimonious, narrative-creating statement from Nottingham Forest. You think Neville stepped across the line? Tell him. Don't drag everybody else into the narrative and then make yourselves holier than thou. And that's the end of the discussion, isn't it?
Now we know Sunderland sink Coventry with a winner in the 122nd minute to reach the Championship playoff final, and they will meet Sheffield United, of course, in that final at Wembley. Third and fourth in the league. Is it a finely poised playoff final, do you think, Danny, between these two?
Well, I mean, you'd say Sheffield United favourites got a bit more experience in their side, but on any given day, a big final, you never know. I thought Sunderland were lucky, to be honest. I watched both the games. Coventry were a better team by quite a way.
And Frank said so, didn't he? We'll get to that.
Well, it wasn't one of those silly comments from a manager who's not seeing what everyone else is seeing. They dominated the game for long, long periods. I mean, Sunderland let them have possession at time, don't get me wrong, but the chances they had and the final third entries and the crosses, and they had a header, didn't they, I think, minute before they conceded. Or was it last minute and normal time? I can't remember, but they had so many good chances.
Yeah, I mean...
But one goal in 200 minutes of football,
not enough.
It's not going to get you where you need to go.
No.
That's right.
I mean, they were the better side in the first game, and they gifted Sunderland their goal.
Yeah.
And Sunderland were anxious, as their manager said at the beginning. I mean, the stadium atmosphere was phenomenal. There's only a few incarnations of sport and football that can produce that sort of reaction. I mean, you watch the goal go in for, obviously, the last-minute header from Ballard.
Incredible.
And the atmosphere was, brilliant. Unbelievable. I was looking towards a penalty shootout and reminding myself of 20 years previously where we scored a goal in the last minute at Sunderland to take in the playoff semi-finals, to take it to penalties, or to injury time.
I think...
And thinking, because their players in our playoff semi-final bottled it in front of their crowd.
Yeah.
And missed penalties.
Yeah.
Well, they certainly didn't. I mean, just because they didn't play, they were resilient, dogged, defended well in numbers. That's discipline. I'm not completely criticising them, because if you don't play well and you still dig out a result with that resilience, it's fair play.
If you look at if Sheffield United turn up, I listen, everyone I tipped Coventry, so of course they're out now. But if Sheffield United turn up, then I would expect them to deal with Sunderland, because I haven't been impressed with Sunderland in the two playoffs. You certainly can't have been impressed with Sunderland in the last 6 games of the seasons where they've lost.
Yeah.
And Coventry can consider themselves a tad unlucky, but if you score 1 goal over 2 legs, you're going to be struggling, no matter how much you dominate the ball.
Well, the man in charge of Sunderland these days is Regis Lebris, and he spoke post-match about the significance for his football club in getting to Wembley.
They never give up, and they are always connected. So it's really a special character within the team. And even when we are not really good with the ball, we are still hard to beat. And so it's tough, and we can wait until something will change the dynamic, and it was the case. So because of this togetherness, this character, we can stay in the game. Yeah, it will be another tough game. I think Coventry were really good tonight, and during the first leg as well. And Sheffield, it will be a tough game, another one. But I think we will be prepared for this fixture, and we'll fight until the end.
I remember the last time I saw Sunderland fans, Simon, in London. They were heading to Wembley that day. I got in the tube with them. The tube was rammed. To a man, to a woman, they were brilliant. They're great supporters. They love their football club, and they love a day out, especially when Wembley's involved. After 8 years away, is it not about time Sunderland moved out of the shadows and back into the big time?
Well, look, I mean, I had it programmed into my head that for some reason or other, the first game was 1-0, so I'm wrong on the scorelines. But ultimately, Sunderland are a big club. I think also Coventry. I mean, Coventry have been away. When it was bought by Sisu in 2003, I think, it was because they thought there was an easy, quick turn as a hedge fund of getting the club back into the Premier League and cashing in and out. That was 22 years ago.
Yeah.
So there's no God-given right for anyone to be back in the league.
Yeah.
Sunderland are a big club. Some of their ownership I didn't get, and we played them a few times, and I didn't really much like their ownership. And
you said that before,
The most amusing call I ever had was when we beat them in that playoff semi-final. I got calls from Freddie Shepherd saying, you can't go out in Newcastle and spend any money because your money's no good. And by the way, whilst you're there and having won this playoff, can you put Bob Murray on the phone, who's the Sunderland chairman? I said, no, I don't think I'm going to put the Sunderland chairman on the phone to the Newcastle chairman so you can laugh at them. But they are, like all fans in parts of the world where the football club is such a huge part of the community.
Yes.
Significant.
Yeah.
But no, I think after 8 years, they don't have a God-given right to be there.
Yeah.
I think Coventry have just as much right to be there in terms of size and value of their football clubs. But when you saw that, because when I saw the atmosphere in the stadium yesterday, and I remarked upon it earlier on the week, when we played them all those years ago, I thought we were going to go into a cauldron. I thought we were going to go into, and it wasn't. And it wasn't fully sold either.
Yeah.
But what I saw yesterday was a completely different feel about this football club. And maybe it's because it's had so much adversity over the last 7-8 years of Ellis Short and all the different challenges that they've had with the ownership model that had Charlie Mevin and people like that involved. And now they've got this young fella with his father's money that's put him into a situation where they've gone back through the leagues.
Yeah.
So fair play to them.
I'm going to put it out here, Danny. And I know there'll be a response from Sunderland fans, and that's why I'm doing it. But I'm doing it for a reason. This club, Sunderland, is it going to be forever in the North East's poor relation category alongside Saudi-owned Newcastle? They can never aspire to that. So they're going to be the poor relation for a long, long time. Sunderland fans, tell me different if you want. But is that not the case?
Well, they had a spell when I was playing where they were up there in the Premier League.
When Bruce was
but the dynamic's different now.
Peter Reid, Brucey, I mean, it has changed. So they're more than capable with their fan base of being competitive. It's like anything. You need a bit of funding. You need time. It has to be right. I think most people look at Newcastle as a more glamorous, bigger club in some respects. Yeah, I think that would be fair. But I don't think I don't think Sunderland have got a ceiling if they had the right finance behind them. They've got huge fan base.
But it's a different time, Daniel. Last time Sunderland were in the Premier League, Mike Ashley was the owner of Newcastle.
True.
Look at it now.
Well, that's
Newcastle flying under the Saudis. Alexander Isak, Bruno Guimaraes. Great stories everywhere you look. Sunderland, poor relation.
Well, I mean, that choice of words is a bit, what's the word, derogatory, I suppose. I don't know about poor relation. I just think they're a club in a different situation.
I don't mean to be derogatory. I think that's a fact of the matter.
I mean, even when they built the Stadium of Light and moved from Roker Park and upticked and upscaled, which is a brilliant stadium, by the way, it still always felt, and maybe because I'm a Southerner and maybe because I'm not versed enough in that part of the world, it does feel that Newcastle are the bigger club. It does feel that Newcastle have the bigger scale. And so as a result of that, if we want to call it the poor relation, what I think it should be categorised as a region that has an embarrassment of riches. You know, you have two big clubs with passionate fan bases. Alongside that, in Teesside, you have Middlesbrough with a big passionate fan base as well. So all of these clubs in that part of the world are part of the rich tapestry that makes the English football pyramid so
special,
brilliant and so special.
Yes.
So rather than sort of create the outrage of saying they're a poor relation, I think it's just good to say that there's what a wonderful area to have 2 football clubs.
Got Hartlepool as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
This Nottingham Forest story involves a player, it involves officials, it involves pundits, it involves a controversial owner, the Greek shipping tycoon Evangelos Marinakis. Let's get to it. Forest's Taiwo Awoniyi, placed in an induced coma in intensive care as he recovers from a serious abdominal bout of surgery, as we understand it. He underwent a complex procedure, it's been described, and a coma can be used to help manage that recovery. So what was this about? It was a game between Forest and Leicester which resulted in a 2-2 draw at the weekend. The incident, which also saw Leicester midfielder Facundo Buonanotte collide with the post, happened after Anthony Elanga was allowed to advance in on goal despite being a mile offside. Play continued after the assistant referee delayed putting up the flag, with both players colliding with the post at speed. Hence the injury to Awoniyi. And then the flag went up. Danny, before we get on to some of the reaction to that, what was your take on this? How can football not change the rules after the Awoniyi fallout here? Is it time to stop protecting officials over players?
I think this is a really difficult one, because the philosophy around not putting the flag up to let the phase of play finish makes sense. The problem is when it's really obvious, and who determines that, by the way? You know, is it 2 yards, 3 yards? You know, whatever everyone's a bit different.
Being correct is what determines it.
Well, the philosophy around letting the play go to get the outcome, and then if it is offside, rather than the other way, seems logical and right to me. But it has gone a bit too far, because some of the offsides we're seeing where the flag, it's just even the players are looking across, not hardly jogging back, because, and then this is the first example we've had of a really bad injury due to this. So we are going to get questions over it. I think this is just unlucky in that respect. So I don't see a way.
You don't see a rule change coming in as a result of the one-way moment.
I think there might be a gentle word with the officials to when it's
a poor decision from the linesman.
It is.
I mean, the actual language is delaying the flag and whistle for an offence is only permissible in a very clear attacking situation. Permissible, which means the judgment of the linesman is if you're offside, he's well within his right to flag.
Yeah, this one.
He chose not to flag.
It was a sheer thing.
Or she. It's not a structural. It's not an issue about the fact they keep the flags down.
Hang on. IFAB's protocol.
Now the language here, I'm reading.
When
it from,
an immediate goal-scoring opportunity is likely to occur, the assistant referee will keep their flag down.
Yeah. And that's what she did.
If they think there's an offside until the passage of play is completed. Once a goal is scored or the chance is gone, so the chance is gone, the assistant will raise the flag to indicate the initial offence.
It's frustrating.
But that's the protocol.
It's frustrating, Simon.
But this is the language that PGML put out, which is delaying the flag whistle for an offence is only permissible in a very clear attacking situation.
Which it was.
So it's permissible to do, which means it's a choice. So if you want to flag, you can flag. If you want to keep your flag down, it's permissible for you to do so. So it's a judgment call. If you know that fella's offside, and you can see he's offside, it's your gift, it's within your gift to either keep your flag down or put it up. It's permissible to keep your flag down. So you make a judgment call as an official. So if you know he's offside, you should flag.
Yeah, so you're talking about competency, aren't we?
Yes.
Right. Yeah, we're not talking
about a rule change.
The rule change.
We're talking about the competency of the official.
The rule change would take things backwards, I think, because what you then get is the flag going up really early, like we used to, in terms of, right, I see it or I don't see it, and then some of them are going to be onside. So what's the lesser of two evils? The way we've got it's okay.
Do you agree with that? I'm kind of going with it. I mean, Danny, you played the game at the highest level. And I'm seeing, I'm getting what you're saying.
But with respect, in situations where it's clear...
It was clear.
Then it's down to the competency of the official. It doesn't need the protocol to be able to be... We have loosely interpreted the law. Maybe we haven't. Maybe someone has given them a strict guideline, which is irrespective of the permissibility, which is their own language.
Right.
It's their own language.
Irrespective, leave it down.
Leave it down. If they've been told that...
Yeah, but then you'll get some raising the flag and some not.
Yeah, you do.
But be right. If you're right,
but Simon, you need consistency.
If someone is too,
because the fans are looking like, what we're going to get here then.
But if it's a marginal call, then ultimately, yeah, that's why offside is so complicated. That's why they haven't mastered it right now, and that's why they need VAR to help it and become automated. But if you're 2 or 3 yards offside and the linesman knows, he knows, then he has no business keeping his flag down. Because he knows that the permissibility of his decision-making process enables him to get out of jail card, I keep it down, but I know he's offside, so I'm going with it, I'm going to back myself. Well, and if he's wrong, then you've got a problem.
And he's not wrong in saying that.
No, I know.
They've got to make the call as they see it.
And so, the grey area with it, or the contentious issue with this, is what you said. Some linesmen would have, linespeople, would have put the flag up there, because it was clear.
Yeah.
The only thing you can say, for her, is that in that situation, maybe she didn't think it was clear and she wasn't sure.
But that's not good enough then.
Okay. But
that's not good enough. I'll defend the referees till the cows come home about making mistakes. But if it's clear and it's obvious and you can clearly see it and there's no debate and a good official that's up with the game, knowing what they're looking at, then it's a no-brainer. Yeah, make the right decision. Stop being cowards.
That's right, Danny, isn't it?
It was clear.
Well, then that's the end of the discussion, isn't it?
No, but in terms of going back to the original point, the law, which you've just read out, I don't think that should be changed.
I don't think they've been cowards. They've got to make a call, though, as they see it.
But the original, I mean, again, the language...
Judge your own judgment.
VAR is there. VAR is there to aid and abet, not to rely on. It's there to aid and abet, and it doesn't take away from the original decision on the field. So that means if you're competent at what you do, you make that decision, and you're right. And she would have been right. And so we wouldn't have had this discussion.
But the same VAR has changed the way the officials do their job.
If it were a toenail and you can't see, then she would have been right to keep her flag down.
Yeah, but let's just agreed. But the reality is this situation, because I've been in games where people have collided with the post and they're not offside. Things can happen on the football pitch, unfortunately.
Yeah, but that could have. What we're saying is
could have been prevented. But so could most things if you look at them from a really pedantic point of view. We wish him well. We hope he's better because that was a nasty one.
Yeah,
and then obviously that caused the knock on, which we're going to talk about next. But no rule change for me with it.
No rule change.
Just better competency.
Agreed.
But the Marinakis situation. So it's Nottingham Forest, 2 statements in 48 hours. And what we saw on the field of play, now, those out there who don't know, but I'm sure more than everybody's seen it. After the game that finished 2-2, a lot of us in the media jumped to the wrong conclusion that Marinakis was saying to Nuno, well, that was a missed opportunity, for God's sake. It turns out he's suggesting what happened there with the
substitution.
A 1 year moment. Yeah. With the substitution, why did it take so long? Why was he off the field of play for so long and we were down to 10? Explain that to me. But Marinakis was out there, putting that point.
What he was doing, Jim,
right on the final whistle to Nuno Espirito Santo.
What he was doing, he was remonstrating with him.
Yeah.
With not particularly too vociferously.
Right.
But what he was doing was saying, why did you put the sub on?
Yeah.
When he couldn't carry on? Because he used his last sub.
Yeah,
thinking he was going to be okay based on the medical thumbs up.
I get that.
That's what he was
fuming. But it boiled down to the optics suggest that Marinakis was giving a bit of a finger wagging.
He was just a bit annoyed.
Nuno. And Gary Neville reacted more immediately to that on Saturday night on social media. Scandalous that from the Forest owner. Nuno should go and negotiate his exit tonight with him. The Forest fans, players and manager do not deserve that. So then Forest hit back with not 1 but 2 statements. And Marinakis, no doubt, would play a major part in this statement. The first to Evangelos Marinakis, this isn't just a football club, it's family. And he instills that message in all of us. That is why he was so personally and emotionally invested in the situation that unfolded at the City Ground. His reaction was one of deep care, responsibility and emotional investment in one of our own. Then...
That was the second statement.
Then they get into it, though, about pundits and how they react. Incidentally, what do you make of that?
What do I think of it?
From Forest reacting...
I think it's rewriting the narrative. I was in defence of this man in terms of the fact he has the right to do as he wants.
Yep.
This is a guy that runs this football club in a certain way. He's the guy that was alleged to have spat at officials. He's the guy that brought Clattenburg in to suggest that the way that they were being refereed was ultimately against the best interests of this football club. And he caused controversy. He's now marched onto a football field, which is his right to do, right, because he owns the football club. I never for 1 second thought that he was on there really berating Nuno Espirito Santo.
No.
I thought Gary Neville's statement was absurd, right? But I'm sorry, with the best will in the world, and whilst you can never know what someone's intention, he wasn't marching on that field because he knew that that player was particularly injured and it was going to be a massive concern long term. He was marching on that field because he was exasperated at the outcome for Nottingham Forest.
You don't know that.
That would be my best guess. And they're trying to rewrite the narrative. And the elegance of what he said in his first narrative was he slaughtered his medical staff. You can do all this in private. You can do all this with your staff. Not one single person that supports Marinakis berating the people that he worked for, allegedly or realistically, would like it done to them in front of all their colleagues in front of an office. That's not how you lead people.
No, but let's put that in perspective before we go on to the second statement, because I do agree with you. If you listen to Nuno after, who dealt with it brilliantly.
He did.
Articulately, calmly.
Yeah.
Marinakis' first statement was reasonable to a degree, and it's mountain out of a molehill, as far as I was concerned. He owns the club. He's done lots of good for it. The club's in a great place.
Indeed.
The statement
because of him.
The statement talked about how proud he was the first time they're now in Europe. Irrelevant what happens in the last 2 games. How he praised Nuno. He had a little dig at the medical staff. Fair enough. He's the owner. So what? Let's not let that deviate from how brilliant Forest season's been. Good statement. The next bit, which is what Simon's talking about and alluding to, is the wrapping it in a different way. You know, what's the word? Like, I don't know, framing of it in a different way.
Rewriting the narrative, controlling the narrative.
To make emotionally, it's one of our own.
I mean,
he cares, he's passionate.
Come on, we know.
But now we'll get to this bit, and no doubt Forest are reacting to what Neville said. And Gary Neville, just to remind you, said, scandalous act from the Forest owner, Nuno should go and negotiate his exit tonight with him. Then Forest go that bit further. In light of this, we urge former coaches and players and other public figures in the game to resist the urge to rush to judgment and fake news online, especially when they don't have all the full facts and context. Baseless, ill-informed outrage for the purposes of personal social media traction serves no one, least of all the injured player. We call on these influential voices to show the same respect for player welfare that they often demand from others. Let concern come before commentary. Now that is a swipe at what Neville said, Danny. So soon after what he witnessed with Marinakis addressing Nuno.
The only thing I think Neville did there, he's jumped in quite quickly thinking that he's on the pitch having a pop at him for whatever and jumped in and emotions got the better of him. I think it's...
Yeah, but it's a ridiculous statement.
No, I agree with you. But it's
a ridiculous statement.
Let me just finish.
And they should be saying it about who they mean it about, because I think it's a pious, sanctimonious, narrative-creating statement for Nottingham Forest. It's a football club that I greatly admire. I think this man's contribution to this football club is remarkable. I think he gave you an interview after they got promoted, told you that they were going to go after European trophies, and he's backed it with his cash.
What's so offensive about the statement?
I think that they're
having a swipe at what Gary Neville said online.
Well, then take out Gary Neville. Don't drag every other pundit into it and everyone else that's observing on the fact.
They might have other pundits went in a similar direction.
This man did not march on that field, in my view, because he was concerned about the well-being of an internal intestine issue with this player. He was frustrated, like everyone else in that stadium, that they hadn't gotten the game won against a lesser side, and specifically Leicester, who are major rivals of theirs. They were losing their Champions League berth as a result of it, and they were frustrated.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think he berated the manager, and I don't think it's a major crime, and I think Neville's assertion that they should all go and renegotiate their contracts and they should be ashamed of it is just ridiculous.
But you don't know that.
But the broad strokes...
The Forest statement says, in moments like this, Marinakis demonstrates his leadership, not just through words, but through action and presence.
That's not leadership. That's not leadership. It's a version of it, because your team are doing... If he did that when their team were bottom of the league about to get relegated, their fans would not be saying the same thing.
What it's framed at is, I think this is the thing. What it's framed at is that he's now gone on the pitch. This is the narrative. He's now gone on the pitch because he's fuming that this player was put back on the pitch because of his welfare. Because
that's not it.
That's not right. Yeah. That's not true.
But how do you know?
Because
come on, they say in the statement
sense.
His deep frustration, Marinakis' deep frustration at seeing our player lying on the ground in severe pain, something no one with genuine care would ignore, triggered him to go on the pitch. It was instinctive, human, and a reflection of just how much this team and the people mean to him.
What triggered him was the fact that a player went back on the pitch who couldn't perform.
Who are you two to deny that that's not why we're on?
And I think that's great if you subscribe to that view, and that's the narrative they want you to subscribe to. The reality is all of that could have been done in the dressing room, out of the public glare, away from the idea that people should be commenting on the orthodoxy of an owner stepping on a pitch. This guy does push the envelope. He does do things.
Because he says he would do the same again if such an unfortunate event were ever to recur.
But the point's not he went on the pitch here.
No, it's not.
That's
for
not
me.
the point. The point is how they're trying to frame it now. We know why he went on. Nuno more or less said it after.
No, but there was a point that Neville's making, which is actually should never go on the pitch, and there's a resistance to the fact that an owner shouldn't be there, and we've seen the Greek owners go in there and boot officials and behave poorly on the continent. So are we seeing this imported into our game? We've seen him being accused of spitting at officials. We've seen him bring in Clattenburg and cause uproar with the idea that Nottingham Forest are being discriminated against by the refereeing fraternity.
But also, in view of what we heard from Gary,
I don't believe it.
Scandalous from that Forest owner. Nuno should go and negotiate his exit tonight with him. But Forest have hit back on that. At Nottingham Forest, we believe the mental and physical well-being of our players and coaching staff must always take precedence over media narratives, inflammatory judgments, and certainly over self-promotion. They're saying that Gary maybe he's putting that out because he knows the clickbait will be substantial. Danny, if fans, players and owners can make emotional judgments and statements, should pundits be afforded that same excuse? Do they need to be held to a higher standard?
I think everyone has to be held to a certain level standard, yeah. I mean, I've been guilty a couple of times of getting involved emotionally in something and saying something spur of the moment, looking back and thinking, that was a bit naive. I jumped in a bit there because I'm probably my own worst critic in that, and trying to do better.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think you have to be held accountable. You can't just say what you want and expect to get away with it. I think Gary's jumped in and said something, well, I assume with his intelligence he would look back and probably regret a bit now. If you watch it back, it's hardly a ding-dong with the manager.
He said it. He's written it on Twitter.
Pardon?
He's written it on Twitter.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So it's not in a spur of the moment. He's had time to consider it.
And if he considered that,
unless he was in the middle of the commentary and then typing it at the same time, that's a considered response.
Yeah.
So he's held accountable. It says considered as his observation.
Well, he is held accountable, isn't he? Because we're talking about it.
Sure. And that's why Nottingham Forest should name him if they feel so aggrieved.
Yeah.
And I can tell you something as well, with due respect to his argument about how the concern would have been, if Nottingham Forest had scored a goal in the last minute of that game, Marinakis wouldn't have been on that pitch, wouldn't have been anywhere near it.
Well, he might have been, but with a big smiley face.
Yeah, and so this idea that we've got to all buy into the idea that the reasons why he was there, which is the point that I object to, which is the reasons why he was there. I don't object to the fact he was there. I don't object to the fact that he might have been having some crosswords. I think it's ill-advised and I think it's bad leadership. You do that in private, right? But the idea we're now being forced to swallow is, don't you dare criticise the principles of what Marinakis did, because his only concern was on a human level.
I don't buy it. His reaction was one of
lectured by Forest about it.
His reaction was one of deep care, responsibility, and emotional investment in one of our own. What's up with that?
But if they'd have scored,
you're saying that wasn't why he was on the pitch.
No, I don't believe it.
He was on the pitch for.
I don't believe it.
He was on the pitch.
But you're then rushing to judgment without all the facts. And you're accusing Gary Neville of exactly doing the same thing.
But I'm not advocating for a whole raft of consequences as a result of it. I'm pushing back against the orthodoxy or the narratives now being created by a sanctimonious, holier-than-thou statement from Nottingham Forest.
Who are you to do that? How do you know that that's not absolutely and precisely why Marinakis
Because I'm entitled to my opinion.
Well, because if you listen to Nuno and the wording and what he said after, you will become acutely aware that the reason he was annoyed was that Forest ended up with 10 players, well, 11 on the pitch, but one who couldn't move because of a bad decision to bring a sub on in your last possible substitution when he couldn't carry on. That's why he was on the pitch. I think common sense prevails. The fact of the matter is, I do agree with them, and I agreed with them on Monday, that what Neville has said, and he's got form for it. He was the one that used the language like when the Man United fans broke into Old Trafford and started intimidating everybody and threatening Souness and Carragher that they should mobilise. So people should be accountable for what they say. And he is accountable, and it was a considered observation, and he's probably delighted because he's got 12 million people viewing it. And Nottingham Forest are right to say clickbait stuff. Well, to direct it at Neville. The fact of the matter is, don't rewrite the narrative. I guarantee you that if they'd have won that game, he wouldn't have been on the field at that moment. He might have been in the dressing room afterwards and said, how's the player? Because that's a human thing to do. But to turn it into the fact that the reasons why he stormed onto the field was primarily to ascertain the well-being of that player is a crock.
It was an instinctive, human, and a reflection of just how much this team and its people mean to him.
Fabulous. It's a crock. And they made what? And by
he
the way,
would do the same again if such an unfortunate event were ever to reoccur.
We're not saying he doesn't care about his players.
No one said that. And by the way, if you stuck 500 million quid in something, I bet you do care about it. Because it's a reflection of you. You want it to be successful. If you've stood in front of the camera and said you're going to win things, you do care about it. And when you do own something, whether it was the football club you grew up supporting, because I'm not, I've heard the narrative that he grew up in the 70s and was an admirer of Nottingham Forest. Fantastic. We all were, right? But if you own something, you have a pride about it. And of course you're invested. Of course you care about the people that work for you. But this is a step too far. You think Neville stepped across the line? Tell him. Don't drag everybody else into the narrative and then make yourselves holier than thou.
Ruben Amorim of Manchester United has paid for 30 of his Manchester United backroom staff to take their families to the Europa League final in Bilbao in Spain, after being told by the club that his coaches, physios and support team would have to pay for their own tickets. Manchester United are not providing their staff with complimentary tickets to the final, in contrast to Spurs, who are, stop mumbling, in contrast to Spurs, who are offering one to every full-time member of their 700-strong workforce. So Tottenham are saying, we've made it. Here, we're sharing these out, and well done for the work you've been doing behind the scenes. We're off to a final. Amorim, on the other hand, is saying, I'm paying for 30 of you to be there. I'm dipping into my own pocket. But why on earth should he have to do that? Is there something a bit tragic and small fry, Simon, about the manager having to dip into his own pocket, let me finish, to pay for the club staff Bilbao tickets?
What is Manchester United's policy on this ad infinitum? They've been to lots of cup finals, lots of different tournaments. So what is their policy in the past?
Well, firstly, the devil...
And why would the coaches and physios not already be there as a matter of course?
They will be.
So he won't be buying tickets for them, will he?
No, I think that story is actually... He must be buying tickets for their family.
Their families.
Yeah,
right.
not them.
That's it.
Okay. Because they need to be there. Right. The physios and the coaches will be inside the stadium.
Exactly. So
which is both noble and praiseworthy.
But their families don't need to
why
be there.
should be doing it?
But what is Manchester United's policy? If we're going to create this narrative, which is basically, it's another example of the management of Man United and the ridiculous mean-spiritedness of it. If they have run this policy previously and that they don't tend to give 700 free tickets away, if that's what Tottenham Hotspur are doing,
every full-time member of their 700-strong workforce.
Well, do you want me to tell you...
They'll be there.
Go ahead, Danny. Speak to it.
I've been in a couple of European finals, and the policy was always the same.
Which is what?
You get given an allocation of tickets as a player, individually, so you'll have your...
How many did you get?
Complimentary was either 2 or 4, and then generally you get around a 20, 25 mark to buy, depending. And obviously, if another player doesn't use allocation, I could say, Simon, are you using all yours? And you go, no, I'll go, can I buy 5 of yours?
Right.
And then you distribute some to family and friends. So even as players, you would buy the extra. You're not given the tickets. You're given the 4 complimentaries, which is maybe 2, I think 4, I can't remember.
Yeah.
But then you get an allocation to buy. The staff would, and I can't remember exactly, but they would get something similar. So you might get 2 complimentaries as a staff, as close staff within the first team. And maybe the possibility of buying a couple.
The staff plus their families. The staff plus one, maybe.
The problem is with it, Jim, and this is where it gets a bit grey area. Staff, huge staff now, in terms of, if you're talking about, what did you say, 700?
700 at Spurs.
So where does that staff go? Canteen staff, kit, mat, where it goes all across the board.
Right.
So giving them individual tickets might have happened in the day, but they wouldn't be getting free tickets for the family. Not in my experience.
Right. Well, our understanding is Spurs are offering one to every full-time member.
Yeah, but not to their families.
Of their 700-strong staff.
Good for them.
But in contrast to that...
So it's not a big story to me.
Amorim, backroom staff plus families, Amorim's like, into his pocket, I'll look after this. Now...
So what?
Should the club be doing that? Should he be doing that?
Well, why
should Manchester United
do we know about this? Why do we know about this? Why do we know that Amorim's gone into his pocket? Who's told us this, and what is the purpose of it being told?
Well, the purpose is Manchester United. So
I know what the purpose of it is. Yes. I know what the nature of the observation is. I just find it a bit wearing that this is a story to keep bashing Man United with.
That's what I'm saying. So we know where it's come from. It's because...
But the only person that could have told anybody that he's bought 30 tickets is Amorim. So I don't know why he'd want to tell everybody. If you want to go buy someone 30 tickets, so I hate people who go give money to charity and make a 4-act play out of doing it. If you want to give money to charity, go give it.
Well, to be fair to Amorim, he might have bought them, not told anyone, but somebody who he's given them to, or somebody in HR where he's had to, or ticket office, not HR, ticket office, wherever he's had to pick up the phone and go, I'll pay for that. They've leaked
it. Like, I didn't take the entirety of the backroom staff, the hundreds of people that work for Crystal Palace, to the playoff final.
Yeah, exactly. How many did you take?
There was no inherent can't remember. But
No, you can remember. How many did you?
I can't remember.
Yes, you can.
No, if I could, I would. I'll tell you, I've got no problem with it. But what I can tell you is I didn't cater for the entire staff, which is what you're suggesting Tottenham are doing. And I don't think any other football club would either.
No.
So this is obviously an assault on Manchester United because it creates an outcome. But the fact of the matter is if it's not a policy, the fact that Tottenham are doing it, fair play.
Yeah.
Everybody hates Daniel, apparently, and he's a mean-spirited skinflint. And this might be an opportunity to suggest to other people that he's not. Right? That he values the people that work for him and he values the football club, full stop. No, Luke, he can't.
Producer Luke's through the glass here jumping about. But how can we know Tottenham are paying for their staff?
Well, because it just takes 1 or 2 staff members to say I got given a ticket.
Exactly.
And so did everybody.
Exactly.
Yeah. But in order to
so
judge...
we know about United, but this is continuing the narrative. According to you,
it is.
The United are a bunch of skinflints under St Jim Ratcliffe, and this is just the furthering of the austerity measures that we've seen applied recently.
Why can't we look at it as just a good gesture from the manager to say, look, those staff who can't, I'll pay for the families. It's like, well done, Ruben.
Would in your judgment and experience of playing at various football clubs, is it incumbent upon the football club to give every member of its staff a free ticket? Is it a standard practice to do so for a major event? If it is not, then it's a non-story. Well done, Tottenham Hotspur, for being so generous.
It's certainly
and no particular discredit for Man United for doing what everyone else does.
I think the norm would be to give the staff the availability to purchase a ticket if they wanted to go.
I think
the
that's right.
700 strong workforce. The 700 strong workforce. Of Tottenham, that's great and that's terrific. That's a thumbs up to them.
Mm-hmm.
The people that Amorim are paying for have nothing to do with the fact that Manchester United's players have stunk the place out in the Premier League this season. So it's a nice reward from them, from the man who they brought in to try and turn things around for them after Ten Hag. It is a good vibe story, but why should it happen? Why does now? Let's say this is the case, and we know it is the case.
It's £1,500.
But why shouldn't Sir Jim? What's his worth? I mean, it's something ridiculous, several billion. If you had that kind of dough, Simon, would you not give it? I'll look after this.
Where's it stop? Where's it stop?
It doesn't matter, Danny.
Well, if you don't,
when are they going to be in the next Europa League final?
Let's say Sir Jim had done that,
right?
And 700 staff at Man United were getting a free ticket. Would the story then be the 700 staff have all got a ticket paid for, but none of their families have?
Where does it stop? Let me just get this right. So the fellas just bunged £1 billion into Man United, then stuck another 200 or 300 million quid on top, right? And that's not enough for us. In you and your little socialist ways, we've got to turn him into making sure that every time there's a good cause involving Manchester United, it's Jim Ratcliffe who isn't in control of the football club, as I've said repeatedly, and as was confirmed by the guy that's just written a book about Manchester United and the ownership model yesterday, Chris Blackhurst. It's his responsibility to be a registered charity and to go out and bankroll anybody that wants to do anything, because the judgment call is Man United are now going through a period of austerity, rather than actually, why are you paying Ferguson £2 million a year? Why are you doing these sort of things that are now being pulled apart and put together again? Because ultimately people are going, now come on now, we've got to run this football club a little bit better than it's been run economically previously.
And yet you, by your own admission, the philanthropist that you are, said a short time ago that when you were at Palace, a number, and you couldn't quite remember the figure exactly, but a number of staff, you funded them getting to a final.
No, we probably got an allocation of tickets and I gave them to them.
You gave them to them?
We would have got an allocation of tickets that are free.
Have you ever got into your own pocket?
Yeah, for 10 years.
No, I don't mean that. But on a one-off basis like this, on a similar vein to what Ruben Amorim is reportedly doing, I'm going to look after them.
It would have been a standard policy.
Have you ever done that?
Yeah,
your own money, the Simon Jordan handbag, was it ever opened, the purse taken out?
I'll open every single week, otherwise they wouldn't have had a job for 10 years, would they? Because the club was losing a fortune. So let's pack that silly argument in. The fact is that Ruben Amorim... You're not, because it's a silly low-resolution conversation. But the fact of the matter it's reductive. But go to Amorim and go, what's he done? He spent the kid's on what, £5, £6, £7 million a year. He spent £1,500 on tickets. That is it. That's the story. He gave £1,500 of tickets to 30 members of staff, family, and friends. Big deal.
So there you go. It's a good news story. It's not a divisive
yes,
one.
it is now.
You've just turned it into a story of division.
No.
A good news story.
No, it's a good news.
I see what you've done there. What a good journalist you are.
It's a good news story because I haven't allowed you and that little gobbling out there to turn it into something that's divisive about Man United and what they shouldn't
it's
done.
already out there as divisive.
Well, it is. I mean, I'm reading the back of one of the papers.
We could curdle the Thames. That one.
One of the papers this morning on its back page. Manchester United stars are unhappy. unhappy at only being offered 2 tickets each for the Europa League final against Tottenham in Bilbao. Even though United could hit a £100 million jackpot if they win a game a week today and qualify automatically for next season's Champions League.
I'm telling you right now, there's no chance that the players are only getting 2 tickets each. That is absolute bull.
Okay. Can you get texting in the next break or so?
Well, okay, so I'm
some of your Manchester United contacts.
I'm a Man U player.
Based
and my
on your
wife
experience.
and 2 kids.
When did you get for Fulham? When Fulham got to the final?
My wife and 3 kids want to go, and they can't.
Yeah.
Is that what United are telling the players, yeah? Come on.
Well, this is what is doing the rounds. United stars are unhappy at being offered only 2 tickets apiece for the Europa League
they might
final.
Have 2 free tickets, and they'll be able to buy 20 odd.
Yeah.
Like I told you before. There's no way. You might get 2 complimentaries, yeah.
Yeah.
But 2 complimentaries doesn't mean you can't get 20 tickets. You can buy the others.
Yeah. Well,
God forbid you'd have to buy them when you're out your 200 grand a week.
I think the upshot of this is well done, Ruben Amorim. For paying for 30 of his backroom staff to get to the... And well done to Simon's best pal, Daniel Levy. Morning, Jim. Danny in shorts this morning. I'm not surprised. I bumped into him on holiday in Oman. Danny was there. The calves on those legs, the biggest calves I've ever seen. Very, very impressive. Even more so when he wore his swimming shorts around the pool area. I mean, I'm not sure what to make of that.
Jim, that was many moons ago when I was in much better condition than I am now. Let's put it that way.
I bet you wore budgie smugglers.
I didn't.
Well, I looked under the desk, as I said, when I was looking for my pen a moment ago.
I went there once, a place called the Cheddar.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no,
well,
man.
I was impressed this morning, so goodness knows what you were like when you were in Oman.
What are other hotels?
Yes. Thank you. What is next for Coventry? From 17th to 5th with Coventry, but 2 playoff heartbreaks on Frank Lampard's CV. Are we any the wiser now to Frank's managerial level? Certainly, as is agreed largely this morning, Coventry were the better team last night and deserved to go through, but they didn't.
It's tough because we deserved to win over 2 games, absolutely, in football terms. Football's not like that. But the performance of them, we dominated the first game, and everyone can say, oh yeah, you know, what the result was, but we dominated the game, so we had to come in and get something, and we did, and we controlled it, and we took the sting out of it, and we played, and we created, and we got our goal, and we created, and we were the team. The crowd went quiet, and then obviously the goal at the end is crucial, but I'm just proud because you can't control every little bit of football.
I think he's right, Danny, isn't he? I mean, everything went to plan until Ballard got the goal. And that was the difference in Sunderland go through. But everything was going to plan. His plan was working. But where's his level?
Well, I think he's still a young coach, learning. I mean, he's done a tremendous job this season. To go in when they were, 16th, 17th, I think, and to get them in the playoffs was...
17th to 5th.
Far and above what I think most people thought was going to happen. So he deserves credit for that, the level of football they've played.
So he's 47 years of age nearly and managed 250 games.
Yeah, 250, yeah.
So
and
does that still qualify him as a young coach then?
Well, maybe not in age, but I think in any coaching job you're always learning. I think the fact he only had 1 spell at the top level in the first... Well, he went in briefly the second time at Chelsea, but the first time he was in at Chelsea, I thought he did a good job. To finish in the top 4 and to get to a cup final is not bad. He had a good squad, but it's still not bad.
So where are you going with it?
I think he's proven at this level. I don't think there's any debate that Frank Lampard could manage in the Championship and be quite successful at it. 1 playoff semi-final, 1 playoff final in 2 attempts. Neither one of them from hugely advantageous position. Obviously, he traded on the currency of being able to pull in some Chelsea youth team players into the Derby setup when Morris was pushing Derby to get forward and go forward as a football club before the challenges that he had. In this situation, he picked up a slightly less preferential circumstance because Coventry weren't in good nick. They've got an owner in there that on prima facie looks ambitious, but has ultimately the club has got to cup semi-finals and to playoffs but not achieved in either of them, so there's a bridesmaid mentality about it, albeit the owner must think that football's relatively easy because he keeps on having a level of success each season that gives him opportunity and aspiration. I don't think there's any doubt that Frank can manage at this level. I think he's a decent manager at this level. I don't know whether he can manage in the Premier League. Yes, there is a good idea that the first season at Chelsea, where they didn't have a lot of choice, they weren't able to go into the transfer market. They did spend some money on Pulisic, but that was legacy payments. And then the second season, when he was given money, the wheels came off, and they came off relatively quickly. You know, the confrontations with Rudiger and people like that created a problem inside the dressing room. In walks Tuchel, makes a mockery of the Lampard challenges by going on and win the Champions League 4 or 5 months later. And then the Everton situation, which I do believe to this day that if Frank had stayed there, Everton would have got relegated. I do think the replacing of Frank and the putting in of Dyche saved Everton from getting relegated. But I think at this level, I think he's I think he was very gracious in his interview, very pragmatic, very elegant in the fact that the first thing he wanted to do, because he must have been crestfallen, was to say congratulations to Sunderland. You're in a stadium where everybody is going absolutely hysterical,
right?
And you've got to watch that and be part of it. You're 300 miles or 200 miles or 150 miles away from home, sat there in the worst place that you want to be, which is losing a playoff semi-final with virtually the last kick of a game. I think that he goes again next year. It depends what his owner does. There are suggestions that a proportion of the funding of Coventry last year was the cashing in of a sell-on of the centre forward that everyone wants to buy this season. If the owner's ambitious...
Who's that? Gyökeres?
Yeah. If the owner's ambitious, then they'll go again and give Frank some more resources. 20-odd million euros was spent last year on players, which is not unrespectable inside the Championship.
Yeah.
I think the club is together again. The initial shockwaves about the reaction of Mark Robins being fired has long since diminished. Frank is part of it now. The team's playing well.
Yeah.
I think they can go again, but I think it's going to be difficult for him.
You're in the camp of blessing in disguise mentality, Danny?
Well, in some respect, I mean, no one would ever think that within the club because you're devastated, aren't you? But I think for Coventry to go again and be a real contender next season, whereas maybe it was one, you've gone from 17th to playoffs, and then possibly jump into the Premier League. I'm not sure I think it would have been too early. I think you've got much more chance of staying up if you go from... I mean, Simon's had experience of this, but if you're a very well-established club in the Championship and winning all season and being much more confident, and look, if you look at
what he did, didn't he? I mean, if he goes up to went up to the Premier League, you've got to take the opportunities where they come. There is no blessing in disguise. You lost a playoff semi-final. Your opportunity to get to the Premier League is there. You take it whilst it's there. It's manifest destiny. You grab what's yours and you take it whilst you can.
Yes.
And if he went up and they made a better fist of it, because the currency's now been set, the narrative has now been written. It's written, which is the promoted sides are crap. They're all going to get 66 points aggregated over the course of the season, and everyone's going to go down with that relegation on their CV. If Frank Lampard either pushed the envelope and got them close to staying up or kept them to stay up, his currency would have gone...
Yeah, that's true.
If he went into the Premier League,
the flip side,
didn't do the nonsense of, I don't care if you did Match of the Day on Sunday or not, of Russell Martins and people of that nature that stuck to a philosophy, irrespective of the reality of what was in front of their bleeding eyes, and went down with a whimper, then no, he wouldn't be. I think he's a pragmatist, Lampard. I think he's a sensible lad.
He is sensible. The reason I'm saying that, the flip side is, you go up, maybe with an really inferior squad, because that's just where you're at. And 6-7 games in, he's lost everyone and been battered, and all of a sudden you're out of a job after doing so wonderfully well the season before. Whereas if you would say that Sheffield United, for example, in the playoffs, are more prepared than Coventry would have been to go up to the Premier League with the squad they've got.
One thing I want to mention, and I by no means want to dampen down the euphoria around Sunderland this morning, but as we saw last night, and it was a hell of an end to the game, of course, and Sunderland fans were ecstatic, but there were some flashpoints as some Sunderland fans ran onto the pitch. Flashpoints with Coventry staff, including a shirtless Sunderland fan and Frank Lampard. Lampard slapping a phone out of the fan's hand, who tried to take a selfie with him on the pitch. Now, what a moment to choose to try and do that. And Lampard's just lost it. But this again, Simon, and I'm not making a mountain out of a molehill here, it never goes away. Why would they want to celebrate in the pitch when the vast majority stayed where they were? Why can they not just follow that example and lap it up from where you viewed the game? Why do you need to go on the damn pitch?
You'll have to ask them. The fact is that Sunderland were very quick to react to it. And they were very quick to get stewards out on the field. They were very quick to do everything they possibly could. And it wasn't a big pitch invasion. It wasn't a wasn't Hillsborough a couple of years ago when all the Sheffield Wednesday fans piled onto the pitch after winning their playoff semi-final.
Right.
So it was a more mooted response. But there was always going to be people that believe that things don't apply to them. People that think they can do as they want and that they're entitled to do it.
Why?
And
Why
because
is
that's
that?
society. Why do people go and burgle people's houses? Why do people do things that they shouldn't do in life? Because they're not.
Why did you get scammed at an ATM? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. We legislate for these things. And if we understood why they would do it, then we'd be like them, wouldn't we? The fact that we don't understand that they do it means that we can't relate to what they do. And the challenge of it is the poor club that's trying to make sure that order is maintained.
Yeah.
They wanted to parody Frank Lampard. They wanted to catch him at a moment.
Put it out on
when he
social
lost.
media. Ha ha,
Yeah,
Frank.
absolutely. And Frank, get out of it. I don't blame him.
Right.
Don't blame him.
Some people you just can't tame or educate or influence.
Just throw them out. Get rid of them. End of conversation. Then they'll get to act in haste and repent at leisure.
Yeah. Well, like that. Could we realistically, Simon, see two managers lift their respective trophies and then depart? What I'm talking about is this. 2 cup finals across the next week. The FA Cup and the Europa League final, of course, in Bilbao, Spain. How intrinsically linked might the two become? Now, you have been of the view, correct me if I'm wrong, that even if Ange Postecoglou wins Europa League, it's unlikely that would be enough to save his job at Tottenham. And then I noticed this morning in your column in the Mail, you make the case for his replacement potentially being at Crystal Palace. In your column, Simon, you say, and you know what you said, Oliver Glasner has a proven track record at Eintracht Frankfurt and has worked the Oracle at Crystal Palace this season. His history suggests he has an ego which will push people hard, players and ownership alike. And then you go on to say, I don't want to be accused by fellow Palace fans of touting our manager for other jobs on the eve of a big game where they could lift the first major trophy in their history. But it's in the interest of objectivity, take note, Martin Keown, that wasn't lost on me. It would be remiss of me not to mention him as a potential successor to Postecoglou.
Yeah.
So Glasner is the man in your mind.
Yeah, I mean, the article is really more about the challenges for Tottenham Hotspur and where Ange Postecoglou is in the great scheme of things. And then in order to suggest, I don't like ever suggesting someone to lose their job, but the question was put to me was, what do you think of where Tottenham are? What do you think the likely outcome of it's going to be? And of course, I can't foresee what Daniel will want to do. All I can do is look at the reality of where they are. You know, this struggle to avoid finishing one place above the relegation zone, it's not good enough. It's not good enough. And the idea that you get one moment of glory as a blueprint for allowing someone to continue is cut out of the Ten Hag playbook. And we know how that's worked out because they made a decision to keep him and then they changed their minds. Now, whether that's worked out with Amorim, that's a different discussion. So what I was doing, and I'm certainly not touting Oliver Glasner out of Crystal Palace, I'm saying if I were Tottenham Hotspur and I were looking at managers that were available, if I were deciding that Ange Postecoglou, thank you, you've won the trophy for us, you've got that monkey off our back. I'm grateful for one thing. I'm grateful for the fact that you've rid me of that particular problem, but you have produced a stinker of a Premier League season, and I'm not entirely sure that you've given me more answers. You provided me with more questions and answers.
I think that's fair. I mean, does FA Cup success make it easier or harder for Palace to retain Glasner?
Well, I think that he will be ambitious, and that doesn't mean his ambitions can't be fulfilled by Crystal Palace. It means that he will be pushing, like I said, he'll be pushing for outcomes that enable Crystal Palace to be in an upward direction. You win an FA Cup, which they're perfectly capable of winning, by the way. This is not a great Man City side. They're not frightened of them, and they can go at them and give them a hard game. You would think that the experiences of Man City that have been there before, know what that looks like, know what that pressure feels like on the day, might give them the outcome. But this is a Palace side that can give anybody problems. And in this game, with Mateta on form, Eze on form, other players in really good nick, there's no reason why they won't give Man City a bloody torrid time and potentially win this FA Cup.
And the trophy, not only the prize, Simon, Europe also the prize.
Sure. And then it opens the question of what was the pathway? What was said to Glasner when he came in? What were the blueprint that he was brought in to achieve? What will he now be asking? Because I know what managers are like. The moment their currency goes up, so there's their expectations. And rightly so. They should push. They should push to a point and be respectful of the point when that point's been reached. but they should be pushing. So then it becomes about whether Palace can fulfil his ambitions, not because he's bigger than Crystal Palace, not because he's entitled to do anything, but because he's a football manager of ambition. If you've got a football manager with no ambition, then you've got a football club that's not progressing. Now, it might be then that Palace have shown no track records in the past of really going deep economically. And there's lots of reasons for that, and I can dig into my bag of vitriol if I want and tell you the reasons why Parish won't do it, or I can look at the reality of the fact that they haven't had the financial resources around them, besides the Americans, that really want to dip in and give them more money.
I was going to say that. Can they be ambitious necessarily, Simon, without European football money? If they don't win the FA Cup, can they still be majorly ambitious?
Well, they can be ambitious as long as PSR permits them to be so, and I don't think there's any PSR requirements. Then it becomes about cash. How much cash have they got? And where does that cash come from to be able to kick on? And what you want to see is Palace not being under jeopardy of losing Eze, because Eze's flying right now. And Elise was plucked out last year. Anderson was plucked out.
Yeah.
They try to get hold of Gehi. They'll come again for him. It becomes about not just what you can keep, right? It's about what you can buy and improve. Because if they are to win the FA Cup, and they've got a good chance to do it, and they're to have a respectable Premier League season, this man looks upward and onwards. And to do that, you're going to be needing to look at 80, 90, 100 million pound transfer funds. And if Palace can't provide that, then it becomes about what the opportunity for someone else comes along and goes, well, actually, we're an ambitious club. We shouldn't be finishing in 17 in the Premier League. We've got a 62,000 all-seater stadium. This is one of the best in the world. We've got upward-forward motivations, i.e. Tottenham. And I'm certainly not touting Palace's manager, because that would be ridiculous. I'm a Palace fan. I'm writing a balanced article and saying this is what I would do if I was in their shoes. I would look at someone like Glasner. I would also look at the other kid over in Bournemouth, because I think he's a very capable, very capable operator.
Yeah. Would Daniel necessarily want a hugely ambitious Oliver Glasner?
Of course he would, because if you haven't got ambition, you've got a good manager. I mean, stylistically, there's a lot made of Ange Postecoglou, and I like him. I want him to be successful, but I don't look at this season and think to myself, that's a blueprint.
Yeah, but he's had super demanding and ambitious before in Conte.
Yeah, but it's super demanding.
In Mourinho.
No, there was that. Mourinho wasn't as big a problem as Conte was. Conte was a self-absorbed, destructive, negative influence on that football club.
Mourinho was a problem. He signed him days before a cup final.
Sure, he was, but in recent time, Mourinho was one thing. We're talking about in the last 18 months now, where Conte's been in there last 4 years. Mourinho's 5 years ago now. It's half a decade ago. So let's move on past Mourinho and look at the fact that Conte was the wrong appointment because he was so destructive and self-absorbed. Stylistically, Nuno Espirito Santo was the wrong fit for Tottenham Hotspur, and Ange Postecoglou looked like he was. And that's why first impressions are so important. I write it in the article, because the first impressions of Ange Postecoglou have carried him for a long period of time. But from what I understand, there's only one person more unpopular than Ange Postecoglou at Tottenham amongst certain sections of the fan base, and that's Daniel. And it's going to be an irony that Daniel might be the person that takes him out. They may not. But looking at the Postecoglou conundrum, he may well be able to stick two fingers up and say, I told you on the way out that I win trophies on my second season. But what he hasn't proven is that Tottenham, you cannot, I don't care about Man United in this conversation, I'm talking about Tottenham. You cannot finish one place off the relegation zone and suggest that you've got any mitigation for that. And every piece of revenue that you may have achieved from getting into the European Cup, the Champions League, has been given away in merit payments. So economically, Tottenham are probably 10 or 15 million pound better off.
Yeah.
In the great scheme of things, it's 3% of their turnover.
Interesting talking about Palace and their chances, and the chances are extremely real against Manchester City. This is Glasner on that.
Most of the stuff we already started to prepare. We will watch a few Man City clips as well, and then it will be Wednesday. Will be we start with the preparation for Man City, but we can't do something different, and it also makes no sense. So it's showing what we can, who we are on our best level. This is how we will enter the final, and then let's see it. And it's football, and everything can happen. But I think the worst thing that we could do is now changing many things, because we can't teach the players something different in 4 days. This would just making them dizzy. So business as usual.
Third time lucky. Third FA Cup final, 1990, 2016, 2025. Third time lucky.
Third time lucky. You never know. I was wondering if there'd be even money going into this. Palace are 72 to win it. City are 10-7 on.
Yeah.
Again, I'm going to ask you this, because your dad played for them. You own the club. Will it be a special day for you if they win it?
Yes and no. I mean, obviously, I had 10 years of owning the football club and grew up with my father that supported them, his father that supported them. So living 200 yards away from the ground, climbing into that stadium, as I write about in the article, as a kid, owning it, wanting to own it because it was something that I felt was something that I wanted to do. But, you know, the end of my time at Palace wasn't fun for me. I didn't enjoy it. The outcome wasn't something I enjoyed. The owners that are there, I don't respect or appreciate. I respect their achievements because they've done wonderfully well. They've done better than me. They've done better than Ron Nodes that had it for 23 years, and they certainly did better than Mark Goldberg who had it for 15 minutes. So I respect their achievements. But it took away a lot of my my feelings towards it. For the Palace fans, I was always in love with the Palace fans. And I think for them to win an FA Cup would be remarkable. I think it would be wonderful. I think they deserve it. I think they're a brilliant fan base. There's always this segment of fan bases that go, why does it always happen to us? Nothing always happens to you. It's the same everywhere around the country. Every football club has good and bad moments. But on the whole, they've been brilliant, brilliant fans. And, you know, when you see Palace fans at Selhurst Park, they remark about the atmosphere. I always loved the travelling fans because I thought they were such wonderful fans. So for the fans of the club, of which there's lots, around the world, everywhere I went, in the far-flung corners of the earth, you'd go to some remote bar in the back end of Nowheresville and someone would pop up as a Palace fan. I always used to think, can't you get in a bleeding stadium? But I would be delighted for them.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to call you on Saturday night if Palace win it.
I'd be thrilled. I'd be thrilled.
I want to know how you are on Saturday
but
night.
what I won't do and what I didn't do and what I wasn't going to be drawn into doing, I wasn't going to do it for the Times, who asked me to do it, and I wasn't going to do it for the Mail, which is write some sentimental, cloying article about my feelings about Crystal Palace and the FA Cup, because it's not how I feel. Go and win the FA Cup. I'll be pleased for you. I'll be delighted for the fans.
Yeah, it would be brilliant, wouldn't it? Yeah, one of football's top business stories coming your way now with Tesco Mobile for Business. And it centres on the Europa League final next week in Bilbao. And of course, we know that whoever wins it, either Tottenham Hotspur or Manchester United, the winner gets Champions League football next season. Now then, is there really an argument to suggest that that just might be a double-edged sword for Ruben Amorim at Manchester United? So Amorim, in the build-up to this huge game, was asked whether it would really be better if United didn't qualify for the Champions League. This was his response.
We need more time with the team. We need to arrange a lot of things in Carrington that we need more time to not thinking game by game by game by game. And then you have the squad. We proved this year that we need to be a better squad if we want to win European games, and then to be really competitive during the Premier League. This is going to be tough. So my feeling is that it's going to be really bad. I don't want to use that as an excuse. It's going to be really tough. And the patience of the fans and you guys, if we don't win it, next year is going to be in the limit, and we have to be perfect to continue everything. I know that. So it's not going to be... It's not better in that way.
It would actually, in other ways, increase the pressure on you.
Yeah, for sure. If we don't win it, that is clear. But I'm not concerned about that.
Talks too much.
I mean,
what
do you say? Talks too much.
Talks too much. Yeah.
Talks too much. I mean, he's so negative there.
Well, he's building in insulations. If I read what he's saying rightly, that next year he'll be under lots of pressure and expectation. No one would expect them to win the Champions League next year. No one would expect them to go deep in it. He has the luxury of a low expectation. So this is like the Labour government at the beginning of their tenure telling everyone that the economy was so bad and so dreadful, and no one can work out the logic of that, because if you want something to be better, you talk it up. You don't talk it down. You build confidence. But he seems to be steering into an idea, and I don't know whether I don't know what the brief was for him. I don't know whether the Man United hierarchy is sitting there allowing him to fill the vacuum in any way he sees fit, because he seems to spend on, and I've never seen a Man United manager seeming to be making so many quotes, so many observations, giving the media so much content, and they all have a responsibility to do a lot of media, but there seems to be a daily staple diet of something that seems to be not really about building Manchester United up. We all would like the luxury of time, and the suggestion that not being in the Champions League next year is a good thing because they need more time is just preposterous for a side of Man United's style, stature, class, and potential expenditure. And I don't know if he's been. I don't know what the briefing is. I don't know whether he's gone rogue, whether there is a change of direction. I'm assuming they're allowing him to say this. I'm assuming they must be comfortable with him saying it. I'm not sure I would be comfortable with what he's saying. I'm not sure that I'd want him to start writing checks that he knows he can't cash yet, but I'd want him to get the balance right, because all I hear from this fellow is one thing after another about the expectation. He's talking to the gallery, which is the fans would expect. No, the fans are realistic. If you don't know that now, you've got more realism amongst these Man United fans than you've probably had in 2 generations in terms of the last 30 or 40 years.
Yeah.
Because they're so beat downtrodden and beaten up by the reality of what Man United has become that no one expects them in Man United to win the Champions League. What they want their team to be, Man United, at this moment in time, and he's in a very luxurious position, they want them to be competitive. Who would have ever thought that during the Premier League era that the conversation would have moved now towards Man United being competitive?
Yeah.
Now that's where they are, and so now, for him to make it even worse than that, to suggest that these expectations are going to put him under pressure. You are managing Manchester United. You should be under pressure, and you should also be making a better fist of it than you currently are. And so, with all that in mind, I don't know what to make of him, because I think that some of the things that he says, people are portraying it as a breath of fresh air. They think it's authentic. I don't think it's authentic at all.
I think he's not coming from a strong standpoint either, Simon. When you say the brief at the moment is to make Manchester United competitive, well, he's failed there. They've lost 17 and 36 in the Premier League. Yeah. But the fact of the matter is, does this not smack of a guy who's already been told, even if you win the Champions League, you ain't getting much of the money next season?
Europa League. No, I don't believe that to be the case.
Even if you win the Europa League and get Champions League money, you ain't getting much of it. You're not going to see much of it.
But we heard yesterday,
he's getting his excuses in early.
But we heard Alex Crook yesterday. I mean, insofar as we know the details of these things and they're not part of the rumour mill, rather than the informed part of it, that there was going to be a lot of money spent at Man United, despite the protestations of they've got to rebalance their squad. They've got a lot of things they've got to get rid of. They've got to get rid of Rashford probably. They've got to get rid of Sancho probably. They've got to get rid of probably Rasmus Højlund. They've got to get rid of Casemiro. They've got to shake it up. And they've got to get these off the wage bill, as well as trying to get some dough in for them. But there's no shortage of cash. There might be some challenges around PSR, but let's not be silly. There's no shortages of cash there. If Jim Ratcliffe and or the Glazers want to pony up some money on whatever terms they pony it up on, whether it's a loan to the football club or not, there's plenty of working cash around if they want it.
Yeah.
Now, this guy has got to be judged by next season. It's always been the case. I said for the last 2 or 3 months, for what my opinion's worth, that there's no parallel universe that he's going to be sacked. We've been sort of saying he's going to get sacked in the summer. And I think, again, Alex came on yesterday and said Man United will not be sacking Ruben Amorim during the summer, whether they lose the Europa League or not. Now, maybe that's right, maybe it's wrong. I think it's right. I think that he'll be given some time to build a side. I think he'll be given sufficient amount of resources during the summer to remodel it into his own look and feel. But I do think if I were his immediate superiors, I'd want to pack some of this nonsense in. I know you've got to fill the vacuum. I know that ultimately you're filling the vacuum with content, and given the fact that it's not your first language, you're going to find sometimes some faux pas and some tripping over one's tongue. But I think that some of the things that he's coming out with are just silly and not representative of the situation, and trying to create an outcome that I cannot work out what the benefit is. What the benefit is.
In the time we've got left in this one, though, I mean, we know that he's stepped in. He's going to be paying for 30 of the United staff and their families to go to the final. And briefly, he spoke about that and why it was the right thing to do.
The situation is simple. You know that we had a lot of things, people leaving, a lot of changing in the staff, and in this moment for our club, sometimes it's hard to understand when to give, when to take, to respect the people that we are taking their jobs in certain moments to survive and to rebuild, and then it's hard and it's complicated for the club to start giving to other members of staff. So it's a really hard position. Then that situation was explained. And in that moment, my reaction was to help, because it's not going to. I'm not a good guy. It's not going to change my life, and to help to the staff to be there comfortable, to be a better staff for the final. Then They talked to the players, and the players had the same reaction. In the same moment, they had the same reaction. So everybody wants the staff there, the families there, but it's hard to manage things in our club, so it's a simple thing.
It seems to me he's saying that we can't be seen to be making people redundant at this football club, and certain numbers of us, myself included, not do anything about it. So I've stepped in and I'm doing something about it.
You can win football matches, and you wouldn't perhaps be making people redundant.
You were shaking your head during that. You're not having any of it.
I just don't know. I just think it's a stupid conversation. I don't know why you're in this conversation. I don't know why people are aware of the fact. People say, well, because if you buy 30 tickets and you give them to people privately and you say to people, listen, this is from me to you, I don't want it out in the public domain, it's not difficult to control. The fact of the matter is, it's in the public domain. I don't even know why it's a discussion. The fact is that the reasons why Ruben Amorim might be able to buy 30 tickets is because the people have paid his wages, and they paid his wages at such an inflated level that he can afford to throw this money out of his pocket on the way down the road. I just think it's a silly conversation. I don't think it's got anything to do with anything. I don't even know why we're having this conversation about Ruben Amorim buying 30 tickets for Man United in the Cup, because all that we're doing is fulfilling the agenda of the narrative that's being put out there, which is that the way that Man United are operating off the field is inappropriate. And I don't necessarily agree. I think the commercial realities are and of course Radcliffe is a commercial man, and so he will make commercial decisions about wastage and people's expenditure. Maybe you've seen something in that interview that I didn't see. I didn't think he was suggesting that because people have been made redundant, that it was inappropriate for what? For what? You're not giving the tickets to the people that have been made redundant, are you? You're giving it to the tickets to the people that haven't been made redundant.
And funnily enough, on the playing side, as the game gets ever closer, we now know that Kulusevski will not be available for Tottenham, nor will Maddison, nor will Bergvall.
It's not helpful for Spurs.
It's kind of, is the balance swinging in the direction of Amorim and Manchester United?
Who knows in this game? It's the best of the bad bunch, isn't it? So we've seen that Tottenham and Man United can perform in these moments. We've seen Tottenham historically have choked at big opportunities. FA Cup semi-finals, Champions League finals haven't turned up.
Yeah.
So this is a different time, different space, different opposition. But both of these teams are capable of being absolutely dreadful on the night or excellent. And from that, what do you deduce? There's nothing to separate them in league form. I saw the two teams play in the Cup quarter-final in the Carabao Cup in December at Spurs. United were shocking. Shocking. Spurs beat them 4-1, and the only time they got in the game was when Fraser Forster decided, the goalkeeper, that he wanted to help them as much as he possibly could. Other than that, Man United were absolutely appalling. And Tottenham weren't much better.
Right. We've seen under the Bole Igbale ownership at Chelsea, Thomas Tuchel came and went, Frank came and went, Pochettino came and went, Potter came and went. The numbers go on and on. It seems they have settled upon Enzo Moresca for whatever reason. After 5 managers in 3 years, do you think Moresca, from what you've seen and heard, is the right choice for the Chelsea ownership to stabilise the whole place?
Well, they're not looking for stabilising, are they? They're looking for progress. They're looking to go back to the top of the table and win things. So I think he gave everyone a dose of reality at Christmas, but I think sometimes I don't know whether it's right to undersell, underpromise and overdeliver, or overpromise and underdeliver, which is what his concern was. The expectation of Chelsea was, ooh, you're in this title race and you have an opportunity to win the league. No one sensible really thought that they did, and he could have controlled that narrative a little bit better rather than he'd spent the X amount of weeks talking it down, so that the performance on the field replicated the fact they couldn't. They lost 3 or 4 games on the bounce, or certainly 2 or 3, and then subsequently killed their opportunities to be successful. I think that Chelsea are having a stable season. They've got an embarrassment of riches. They've got really good players, and they've got a group of players that are beginning to come to, they've got young players in there like Caicedo and other players, Lavia when he's fit, and Madueke, that will be really good players in the next seasons coming forward, because they've got the base there. I think he's had a stable season. I think there's been no real controversy. They'll win the European Conference League, and if they don't, they need shooting.
As you say, under the Americans who want to go places, but I think, as I understand it, under the briefing yesterday, it was whether or not we get Champions League football, his job is safe.
But that's their gift to say. Whether that's the right thing to say or whether it's the wrong thing to say. It's perhaps taking the pressure off in the moment, because, you're going to the back end of the season. They would expect to be in the Champions League spots. The Champions League spot go down to 5th place, right? So they'd expect to be in amongst it.
Yeah.
And they are in amongst it. And so
They've got a fight in their hands to get it, though.
They have got a fight in their hands, but they've got Man United.
United and Forest the final day.
So what? Forest is a challenging one. Man United have got got a Europa League Cup to come up, right? So they're going to be, they're playing Man United this weekend, aren't they?
They're playing Friday night,
right? So because it was moved around, it was readjusted.
Yeah.
Right? So Man United are, what they're going to get. Who knows where they get Man United? I would think Chelsea can beat Man United. I think the blood and thunder will be in Nottingham Forest.
Yeah.
And that game, but I think they should qualify for the Champions League. I think he should be judged by those standards. Do I think he should be sacked if he doesn't achieve it? No, but I think it shortens the leash on him if they don't. I think if they don't continue to evolve and to move forward, because it's now 3 seasons, and they will be looking to kick on. I know that the money doesn't burn a hole in their pockets. I know they're not worried about the economics, and everyone else is more worried than they are. But what is the point of owning a Chelsea if a Chelsea isn't at the very top of the pyramid?
I'm not entirely sure what you think of the Europa Conference League.
Certainly a pub league.
You think it's a pub league? Moresca said no. There is a significance attached to it if we end up winning it. This was him.
Yeah, no. For me, winning a trophy this season, Conference League trophy, is a statement in terms of that. It's a statement, as you said, that you can say Chelsea's back because. First of all, you win a trophy. Then, if Madrid or different clubs they don't play conference, it's because they didn't deserve to play conference. I always try to be. If we play conference, it's because it's where we are in the conference. So we need to start from there. We are playing conference. If you play conference, you cannot win Champions League. If you can play conference, you cannot win Europa League. If you play conference, the only trophy you can win is conference. And we're going to try our best tomorrow to reach the final and then to win the trophy. And as I said, from there, I think it's a good starting point to start to build, winner mentality and win games and trophy.
I kind of get that. It's a starting point.
Well, I'm going to give him some latitude. The English isn't his first language, because other than that, I think it's a lot of a babbling drivel. Anyone with half a brain can understand that if you're in a Conference League, you can't win the Champions League. I mean, you'd have to be.
It creates a winning mentality.
You'd have to be born under a rock. No, what he's saying is that if you're in a competition, then you do the best you can in it. If you're Chelsea with all the resources you've got against the teams that you're playing against, and you don't win it, then you should be slightly embarrassed. In the same way that Tottenham should have been embarrassed a few years ago in the manner in which they turned up into it. Chelsea go into this competition and
got a job in their hands to win it.
What?
Betis.
Okay, we'll see.
Keown Anthony.
We'll see. Oh yeah. He was terrifying at Man United, wasn't he?
No, I know, but he's been good at.
Yeah, they all have their 5 minutes, don't they? Rashford went off to Aston Villa, had his 5 minutes.
Is he right? Are Chelsea back if they win this thing?
No, of course they're not. They're not back on the league stage. And
even though it's the first trophy of the Clear Lake Todd Bully era.
The clue is in the title, the word conference. When you think of conference, what do you think of? I think of non-league football. I don't think of the highfalutin side of football. It is the third tier of English football, third tier competition in European football, that it sucks as far down the pyramid as it possibly can inside the Premier League to get teams in that have got some validity.
Would you say it's a public if Palace are in the final?
But Palace aren't Chelsea. And I would still say the same thing. That it's
we didn't call it a public tournament when West Ham won it.
Yes, I did.
Or did you?
I said precisely that.
Did he?
Yes, I did.
We'll look at that.
You will. You'll be able,
we can do these things.
And I've had that conversation repeatedly with Martin O'Neill in the studio, who takes a slightly sniffy attitude towards it as well, which is that he would do because he won the European Cup. So he thinks of the European Cup as the benchmark. It is another tournament. I mean, come on. Do we really need 3 competitions in Europe? Do we really need 50% of the Premier League competing in European football and then whining about the fact that it means they haven't got a squad they can rotate?
There's Robin Colchester. Simon, don't be so dismissive of the Conference League. You would take Crystal Palace winning it all the time if they were in it.
But we're not talking about Crystal Palace, we're talking about Chelsea.
Oh, I see.
And who cares about Colchester anyway? That's a competition that you're never going to play in, so keep to your own lane. The fact of the matter is that we're talking about Chelsea. We're talking about Chelsea. And the idea of the Conference League being something meaningful, I don't think there needs to be 3 competitions in Europe. I think you have the Champions League, which is laughable in and of itself, because that's not made up of champions. It's been turned into a commercial outcome. It's a participation competition. Most teams are happy to be there because they know they're going to get 35 million quid for being there. And look at the bottom of that competition. Young boys finishing with no points.
But you know, the Conference League final is the beginning of something for Chelsea. I get what Moresca's saying. It would mark the beginning of something. If they don't win it, it's an embarrassment.
Yeah,
but if they do win it,
it's a poison chalice.
Yeah,
actually, because if you don't win it, then you look like you're embarrassed. If you do win it, you're expected to win it. Well, then win it, and it's like people say if you've got a number one, if you've got a single that goes into the charts, you might as well be top of the charts, mightn't you? If you're in the Conference League, if you're playing in the Euro Conference League,
yeah.
I mean, look at the teams they've played in it. I mean, look at the teams they've played.
Oh, I mean, Dewgarden in the semi-finals is ridiculous, really. I kind of agree with you on that. But having said that, it was enjoyable when West Ham won it, and the scenes were great thereafter. David Sullivan spoke to us about it.
Yeah.
How enjoyable this will be for Chelsea fans, I don't know. It remains to be seen. But Moresca, I think, is right. Yeah, it would be the beginning of something.
Well, he's certainly right.
So don't dare lose it.
He's certainly right. If you play in the Conference League, you're not playing the Champions League. And he's certainly right. If you play in the Conference League, you're not playing the Europa League. So these are massive insights that we all feel the benefit of.
And Simon, will you watch the Europa Conference League final?
No.
How did I think that would be your answer? Well done to Leyton Orient, who reached the League One playoff final via a penalty shootout win over Stockport. And of course that comes, Simon, after the controversy over Orient's 2 goals in the first leg, which were scored. And of course, VAR was not present on those nights. But anyway, Leyton Orient have made it, and they will meet the winners of Charlton or Wycombe at Wembley. But I mean, I watched the end of it. I got in last night to watch the penalty shootout and whatnot. Now,
anybody but Charlton for me.
It was up at Stockport. Well, I'd be happy if Charlton do it.
Good for you.
They're all right. The fans were good. At the height of the Roland Duchâtelet nonsense, the fans were coming to me in numbers saying, ask Duchâtelet this, ask Duchâtelet that. So I did. And I went to Brussels and Belgium and did that.
I remember that time, and to my eternal disappointment, I gained some currency amongst Charlton fans.
Well, what's wrong with that?
Because I was challenging Duchâtelet's nonsense. What's wrong with that?
Yeah.
I don't like Charlton, and Charlton fans don't like me. So there's nothing wrong with it. It just happens to be a mutual distaste, I suspect.
Is it time the UK goes back in for a men's World Cup? I don't know what your take on this is, Simon. The United Kingdom has been urged to bid to host the men's World Cup by FIFA President Victor Montagliani. What a wonderful name. The Vice President, Victor Montagliani. Montagliani is saying, I cannot see why not just England, but the United Kingdom shouldn't be hosting the World Cup. I think it would be a fantastic World Cup, and I think they should seriously think of putting their foot forward to host it. We all know what the game means in the UK, and I think it's time. Is it time the UK goes back in for a men's World Cup, Simon?
Yeah, I don't see why not. I mean, the economic shock of these tournaments, I'm not entirely sure. I mean, it's one of the few times in my life where I imagine that I'll find some accord with that ghastly mayor, Sadiq Khan, because I think he's in the same position. I think he believes that we should be hosting major tournaments and that the infrastructure is there.
Yeah,
good morning, Sadiq. The stadiums are built, the structures are there. And I absolutely think that if economically, because obviously someone's got to pay for these things and someone's got to put in various financial contributions to be able to achieve the outcome that FIFA wanted. Let's be clear. FIFA wants revenue. They want revenue from these tournaments. And the reasons why the 2026 World Cup landed where it did is because Trump in his first stint promised FIFA $15 billion worth of revenue. And so FIFA jumped all over that and gave it to Mexico and Canada and the US. We've had previous false starts. We had a badly run campaign in 2010, 2011 for one of the World Cups that we had the illusion that we were going to win, and then we had Tresman running around bad-mouthing various people and then expecting to get an outcome in our favour.
Well, that's right.
And obviously there was a lot of fanfare about Beckham and Sebastian Coe and David Dean's involvement, and then they found out that they've got a handful of nothing in that situation. Should we be wanting to have a World Cup? Yeah. Is there the consequence of having a World Cup and not winning it something that we should be mindful? No, of course not. Of course not. We have arguably the healthiest football pyramid in world football. We have one of the best infrastructures. It's a national game. It's the domestic powerhouse. I mean, of course, we want to commit our acts of self-harm. We want to self-flagellate and make sure that we're the only footballing nation in the world that introduces an independent regulator to govern its own affairs, even though it's an resounding success in most of its instances. But I've always been, I think the Euro Championships in '96 were brilliant. I think they were brilliant in every aspect.
Yeah.
and I would really be very keen to see a World Cup in this country. I think it would be fantastic.
I mean, there is an argument maybe that a World Cup potentially and a World Cup finals has become bigger than the UK as hosts. I mean, when you look at it next summer, it's all over the place. It's in the USA, Canada, and Mexico, but it will be spectacular. Of that, there is no doubt. FIFA awarded the 2030 World Cup to Spain, Portugal, and Morocco, plus 3 matches in South America. 2034 is heading to Saudi Arabia with the promises of a stadium in the sky.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, do you want to follow that? What's the UK going to throw in that might match that? Or even, I mean, we talk these days about Old Trafford and a leaky roof.
Well, yeah, and we also talk about the wonderful other stadiums that we've got. By that time, you'll have had probably an Old Trafford being rebuilt, or a new one, a new Trafford. You've got a litany of new stadiums. You've got Tottenham Hotspur that have built arguably the greatest stadium in domestic sport around the globe currently. You've got Wembley Stadium, which is universally accepted as one of the most iconic environments, despite the fact that we want to pull down that idea that we should be moving it around the country, because there's always this argument about what you haven't got somewhere else is a disadvantage. Whereas the fact of the matter is the reasons why football in this country is heralded and revered so much is because of environments like Wembley, which is why it was a preposterous, despicable idea to sell Wembley to Shad Khan for a discount, because we couldn't run our FA properly for a period of time when the pandemic kicked in.
Yeah.
So I think all of these things, it's like watching the evolution of Wimbledon. Wimbledon hasn't changed. Tennis has evolved. Tennis has become a much bigger sport and a much more viewed sport, but Wimbledon is still considered to be the marquee event as far as tennis is concerned. So with the World Cup, which has been hijacked by FIFA, it used to be the Jules Rimet Trophy, it's now the FIFA World Cup, hijacked by them. But as far as the ability to be able to put on a tournament, yeah, we know.
We could follow the Saudis, a stadium in the sky.
Yeah, but they've got no... But that's a stadium.
This newly created magical city.
They've got no heartbeat of this sport right now, and maybe they will have in 8 years' time. And they're trying their very level best to use sport as an opportunity to lever things from their society to give them advantages, and sport's being utilised for that. But if you look at the heartbeat of sport, really, and certainly football, it is the Europeans and the South Americans. And so at the centre of the European sporting prism is the UK.
Is it?
Is it not?
The European. I mean, a home World Cup, would it not be good for the economy but damaging for the English soul? I mean, if you don't bring football home,
depends what kind of tournament
when it's on your doorstep, it's going to be a letdown.
Well, again, I make the argument it is the heart of the European sport, because you've got Spain being given. I mean, there's arguments for Germany and Spain, but they've had World Cups recently, and they've had European Championships, and Spain are having the one in 2030. So, of course, it's a reasonable, valid argument that the next time it comes back into the European position, that the domestic opportunities that the UK brings, this Premier League is not going to get weaker. It's not going to get financially less.
It's a Premier League that's, the clubs are mostly owned by Americans. That's the direction we're going in.
But that's always been the case. Whether it's all mostly owned by Americans, most of the football pyramid in this country has an involvement from overseas investment. Unfortunately, that's the tragedy of this country. It doesn't invest enough in its own product. But I don't think also that you should start with a half-empty cup. I mean, if you were suggesting we host the World Cup in Scotland, then I could understand your argument.
Oh, thank you.
But the fact of the matter is that we are a major leading sport.
It's part of it. I mean, this guy's going on about the UK. So you've got sure, you've got a stadium infrastructure that's all right, but it ain't going to match. I would think it's not going to match what we're going to see in the US, Canada, and Mexico next summer.
Why's that then?
And it certainly wouldn't match a stadium in the sky in 2034. What will we come up with, apart from these stadiums around the country that are the homes of clubs that you say quite rightly, like Liverpool, Newcastle, elsewhere, Tottenham? These are iconic, right?
These are iconic stadiums that resonate around the world.
In England.
That resonate around the world. Why are Manchester United argued, even in their most period of decline, to be still one of the biggest clubs in the world? Why have Liverpool got audiences around the world? Manchester City, now the same. Arsenal, the same. These are iconic, world-renowned football clubs seeded in a country that ultimately, in conjunction with Scotland, gave the world the game, has the most powerful domestic league, has the most revenue being generated, and we're going to compete with a different alternative, which is the Middle East, trying to establish certain aspects of its society and culture through sport. doesn't have the heritage, doesn't have the legacy, doesn't have the feeling that the uniqueness of European and South American football brings, but will add something different.
All right.
The Qatar World Cup added something different. It wasn't better or worse. It was different. It provided a different outlook, I think the 1982 World Cup in Spain was phenomenal.
Oh, it was. It was.
Phenomenal.
So, okay, we're in for it. You fancy it. We'll take the FIFA Vice President, Victor Montagliani, up in his offer. Bid for it, and we'll see where it goes.
But, I mean, I don't know why he's speaking to it. I mean, it's what he says. I don't know how much influence or authority he has, and why. I don't know the nuance.
Well,
or
he
the context.
runs football in North and Central America.
So why is he advocating
and the
for
Caribbean?
Well, then fine. So why doesn't he?
He was asked about the UK.
Yeah.
Should they bid again? He says, yeah.
Well, he's not going to say no, is he?
He says, go over the shenanigans around voting in the past. And get on with your bidding.
If you're asked, if he's asked as a politician, which is in part his role, should the UK bid for it? He's not going to say no, is he? Because first of all, he's going to want the competitive tension of people being able to bid that creates an outcome. Because if there's only one person bidding for a World Cup, you're only going to get one outcome, which is what they're prepared to give you as a result of their idea that they want the World Cup. So of course, I wouldn't take much notice of what he's saying. But the question is, should we have a World Cup? Absolutely. Why shouldn't we? The question is not why should we? Why shouldn't we?
Why shouldn't we? Why shouldn't we? I'm with you on that.
60 years. 60 years.
I know. I don't know if I'll be around to see it.